I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay.
My magnetic personality.
What? Yeah. I presume everybody's had an opportunity to look at the new agenda that I handed out just a little bit ago. If there are any...
This is the one from the email. I don't know if there's the newer
It's right
one.
there.
Right there.
They're right there.
Okay. Anybody need one?
If you take a couple seconds to take a look at that. If there are any additions, deletions, changes. Okay, any changes, corrections, deletions, additions? Seeing none, the chair will entertain a motion to approve the agenda as submitted.
Make a motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The agenda is approved. The minutes from March 7th special meeting. Hopefully you all have had an opportunity to take a look at the minutes from that meeting. It looks like that. Any changes, corrections, deletions, additions? Seeing none, the chair will entertain a motion to accept the minutes as submitted.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes are approved. Okay. Any public comment? None. Okay. Reports. Chief?
I would ask if we could, can we make some change on the agenda so we can have Detective Sergeant Lucchese speak about the tip line that is on the agenda?
Yep. Do you want to add
gracious
that
enough
as
to
part
attend.
of your report, or?
Yes, that
Okay.
would be great.
Okay.
Detective Sergeant, come on up. You can slide a chair up too if you'd like. Thank you. Have you met one of our commissioners?
Bob Lucchese, sir.
Nice to meet you.
Detective Sergeant?
The chief asked me to just check into a couple of the different tip lines or anonymous tip lines that some area agencies are utilizing. We looked at two different companies. One is Public Engines, which operates the software. It's called TipSoft, which was publicized recently in the Freeman by the city of the City of Kingston Police Department. They're utilizing that software. Another company is called Tip411. Both pretty much operate in the same manner. The Tip software is an anonymous program that allows citizens to alert the police about anything, any matter that they wish. What a citizen would end up doing is basically registering with the company for free. They register for either SMS texts or emails, similar to the way people can do now with New York Alert, Nixle, and Twitter. And what this allows them, once they're registered, they in turn can then place anonymous or place tips to the police department about crimes or incidences as they see happening. How it happens is that a citizen would just see something happening. They would SMS message on their phone. The message is relayed to the company's servers, where they have stripping software, which basically strips the message of any identifiable tracking. That message is then forwarded to the police department. We can then log on to the system, and we can carry on a real-time conversation with those individuals, and they can maintain their anonymity in doing such. All of the, both companies allow for anonymous tipping. They also allow for what they would term message blasts, so that if we have information about an individual that we want to relay to the public, we would put it out, and it would be received by these people via email or text, as long as they're registered with us. Again, similar to New York Alert or Nixle. And then the last component is a crime mapping component, where the companies will work with our records management system in order to integrate our incidents into a real-time mapping program. And again, this is a program, or the mapping program would be accessible to members of the public, and they can actually submit tips via what they see on the mapping program itself. The two companies, the costs that we looked into, TipSoft bases their cost on the population, the census population of the community. They quoted us a price of $1,908 plus a $400 one-time training and installation fee. That does not include the mapping program. Tip 411 quoted a price of $5,600 for a 2-year subscription. The only thing that TipSoft said, TipSoft did indicate that if we subscribe for 3 years, they would knock 25% off of the price.
They're the ones 1408?
They're 1908.
1908.
That does not include their mapping. If we were to utilize or subscribe to their mapping program as well, the price jumps to, the initial first-year price would be $3,584. Again, then that would, if we subscribe for a 3-year period, they would knock 25% off of that.
You know, in the article that we were sent a link to, I'm just kind of curious because they indicated that it cost them $1,700 a year for Kingston through TipSoft. I'm curious why New Paltz would be 19.
Their population is greater.
So they pay less per year?
Because of they base it on the census population.
Yeah.
The higher I think the population was, then the less it was going to cost us.
Okay. And I just had
And
one.
again, I'm not, I don't know if that's an accurate quote as well.
Sure, that's
but
right.
what they do say is they base it on census population.
Yeah. And when they strip the identification of the tipster, that information, though, can be retrieved if it needed to be or not. Do they not even know?
I don't believe the company releases that information.
But does the company retain that information?
I don't know.
I did not ask if they could obtain that information. What TipSoft utilizes, and I did a real-time demonstration with them. TipSoft they utilize 2 servers. So when you, as a tipster, make your initial SMS text message, it goes to one of their initial server, which strips it of all identifiable characteristics. You receive a computer-generated number. Then their information is transferred to a second server, which then relays it to us.
Right.
So there's always a buffer. I don't know if they have access to that information at all.
Mm-hmm. I was just curious, I mean, does the police department feel that crime is underreported in New Paltz? That's a problem?
I think in general it's underreported because a lot of people don't want to be involved.
Mm-hmm.
I think this would help with that. Once it's known that you are in fact going to be anonymous. What is nice about this is because we get tips now where people want to remain anonymous and not give you a phone number or anything. What's nice is that this allows us to also go back and ask questions, send them an email back through this system and service so that we still don't know who they are, but we can still communicate.
The tipster,
which is a nice feature.
The tipster can end that dialogue at any time they want.
Right.
And once they cut that dialogue off, we have no means of reaching out for them.
How, go ahead.
When you say the tipster has to register, how far in advance do they have to register? That part I'm not clear.
What TipSoft will do, the public engines, they will provide us with a public relations packet. So it would then be incumbent upon us to advertise this, encourage people to subscribe to this, to the software, to this service. And there is no time limit. They can subscribe at any point in time, and once they subscribe, then they can begin transmitting text messages, and they can also, they would also be eligible to receive message blasts from us.
So if somebody registered and they witnessed a crime and they texted it in, goes through the servers, their identification is stripped, and then it's forwarded to the police department, to an individual?
Well, that's, I think we have to assign which email it would go to, and whether we have to create one specific for an on-duty dispatch, or if it would roll over to our...
Is it an email or a text?
You can choose how you want it received, and you can choose who you want it to be received by. In talking with some of the people up in the city of Kingston, their dispatch would initially receive it and then triage it out to whoever was the appropriate division.
How do tips work now? Because let me give some context for this. Ira and I both received a text message from an individual indicating that, you know, this is what Kingston is doing, and it was their understanding that when people phoned in for tips, they went right to the detectives division or something like that. And the fear was, because it's coming into the police department, you guys generally know where anybody is, and because of the special caller ID that you have, so no tip, according to them, was really ever super anonymous, because we know where you are when you call the police department. So the concern was it perhaps would keep people from actually calling in to provide help, to help you guys solve crimes, because they're not really anonymous, because you know who they are, because of the sophisticated equipment that you have in the department. And so they thought this might be a better way to encourage more people to work. Now, I don't know whether or not that understanding of how your system works as it relates to tips, but I do know that you guys have like the Big Brother kind of thing going on with the caller ID stuff.
Well, I like to
right?
say that, you know, people should always think that that's nice. However, the fact is, if their phone number is anonymous and private or blocked, our line will not turn you away because your number is blocked. Some agencies will do that and say, you know, we're not going to let you call into our agency if you're blocked. We do not feel that that is a good move, because if there's something important enough for a community member to call us on, if they want to remain anonymous and be blocked, we still want their information, and we want them to be able to call us and feel comfortable doing that. But you always have people that will still not truly believe that, but that is the fact that you know, if you are blocked, you're blocked to us. The only way we could retrieve information if it's more involved, and we need subpoenas and everything else, just like we would for any criminal investigation.
Right. So the tip, let's use the bank robbery, for example, in the press release that we got. That telephone number went and goes to whom?
Detective Division.
Okay. So...
That's on the press release. If you have more information, contact.
Oh, sorry, yeah,
Detective
Detective
Division.
Division.
Okay.
And that's their.
And that's the request for tips goes to the detectives
Correct.
division. So one of you guys would pick up the phone in there, and do you
Or
generally...
there's a voicemail.
Is there a
there also.
voicemail?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's not something where you would...
We don't man 24 hours a day.
Okay.
No, you can leave. There's one of the options is to just leave a tip. And your tip can be anonymous or not, but there is caller ID that is attached to that.
Right.
Here's what I start saying.
Okay.
You know, one of the reason I asked the question about the identity of the tipster and whether that can be retrieved, I mean, I could foresee a situation where somebody could use a system like this to really tie the police up, maybe intentionally tie them up from being able to respond to something that really needed to be responded to, or somebody who just is mischievous and thinks it might be fun to phone in tips and keep you guys moving, on your toes, would you be able to identify that individual so that you could prevent them from doing that?
I would think that under that circumstance, that you would be able to do that based on, again, because now you're falsely reporting. That would open up an investigation against that individual, which would then give us the ability to subpoena the records of the company or whatever else to try to track that information. I'm not really familiar with exactly how they have the information stored. It would have to be a experiment if it does occur that way.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have that information.
I did not ask whether or not they store that information.
I'm also curious if somebody signs up, if there's the terms of service that might indicate under what conditions they could be discontinued.
But along your line of thought with respect to people tying them up by just doing phony tips, you have the possibility of that happening with a phone call, too.
Oh, yes, yeah.
So, I mean, the only difference is you're using a cell phone or an iPad.
Well, but you have anonymity. With the tipster program, you have a greater degree of anonymity.
Agreed.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay. Okay.
If I could just ask, I don't know if I remember if I read it or not, what's the success with the other departments in the area using it? And if I can get right to it, I mean, what's your impression of?
I know that Kingston has had a couple of successes with it, but it's still new, so I don't know if you can accurately assess the cost benefit for it. So I don't know if they can even make an accurate assessment of that at this point.
Steve, in this article, which is dated March 12th, they haven't made any arrests. Investigations take time, so it is still pretty new. But they're getting more tips per month, considerably more tips per month than they were with their telephone call line.
The second question, too, I mean, based on your knowledge of the community, cutting right to the chase, do you think it's worth looking into trying it?
I think it would be a good feature. I think we do need to do a little bit more research on some of the questions that's coming out here. But I think it's another tool, and basically that's what we look for, additional tools that could help, bring information to us. Again, we did this research based on the request from the commission when we saw this article. One thing we can do also is, let it go a couple months and really get a good idea from Kingston to see what they're really seeing and if it's really working.
See if they stick with it.
Yeah, because although the cost isn't phenomenal, it is still a cost.
Yeah, well, I was going to ask, that's something that we would have to budget for next year, number one. Is it, as you go about getting additional information from them based on questions that you get here, would it be prudent to perhaps have a demonstration or, have them?
The questions you're asking, aside from whether or not the information is stored, the demonstration that I was part of it, we can have it run for the commission if we'd like to. I don't know if that would answer the questions as far as the cost value goes.
Right.
Where do we get their representative down here?
So they're willing to. We did a video right through the internet, and they're willing to. They would answer whatever questions you have, and they would be willing to put a demonstration. I don't know if they could do it at this time of night, but I know that they are available for that, and I did ask if they would be willing to follow up with that.
Actually come and do a.
Oh, here I don't. These are companies that are not. The company. One company has its main office in Utah, and
so they don't have representatives, sales.
Yeah, I was filing a out-of-state number.
I see.
Ira, you had.
Yeah, Chief, is this seized-astable?
Yeah, this would probably be able to be used from the seized account.
Because we just got, which I happened to check, we just got that $10,050 put into the seized asset account, and this would be something that we could take out of it if we decide to go ahead with it.
Yeah.
10 months out of the year, you do have the potential for a lot more tips. When the college is in session, so it's I mean, you're right, I think crime is underreported. I mean, this might bring more to light.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, this was presented as to me and Ira, and it was more, you know, we don't think it's really anonymous. So, you know, is there a way that we perhaps can implement something? And it doesn't, you know, I don't necessarily think that this has to be the only solution to the problem. What we can, you know, if you guys have other ideas about how to make sure that we can increase the number of tips that we get from people in a cost-effective way that is purely anonymous, so that, you know, there's no traces of identification for anybody, so that people feel comfortable, you know, I think that would be a good thing too. I'm not wed to this idea. It's, I mean, if you have a better solution.
I mean, as the chief said, if you have a blocked phone number where it's not going to register, you know, it just, you leave a voicemail and that would be it. There'd be no way of tracking who that individual was. You know, and so that is one way, which is a lot less costly than this. People, you know, but again, it's just a matter of getting people to believe that as long as it's blocked, we're not, you know, we're not able to track that.
Right.
And you know, again, depending upon the crime, I don't necessarily know if people would be that concerned. We received a number of tips following the robbery, and you know, all of the people were. None of them were concerned about their anonymity, but you know, I understand where that does become an issue.
We do also receive mail at times without a return address or without information. I think the important thing to know, though, is if it's something that is an immediate response, you know, we don't want you leaving a voicemail, you know, we don't want you sending a letter, and, you know, if we need immediate response, we need that phone call, and block your number, call our emergency line, and just say, I want to be anonymous. If you look in our system, there's many, many calls that has as a caller, anonymous. Anonymous male, anonymous female, just so we know if it was male or female that calls, you know, so that if, you know, that just helps us understand the call a little better sometimes.
But with a high level of urgency, somebody could call 911, right?
Oh, yes.
And sort of affect the same.
Same, if they call 911, 911 will do the same thing that we do. They'll ask your name. If you say, I want to be anonymous, you'll be anonymous. 911 has the same equipment as we do that, you know, yeah, we have caller ID, but if your number's blocked, it's blocked.
Well, the 911's an enhanced system.
Well, they have
Not the
enhanced
address.
system.
But in terms of there being another mechanism for somebody to report a crime, for example, that's occurring, something that's urgent, I mean, 911 would still be the way to do that, or
It's 911 or even the police department. If you're seeing the crimes in place real time, you know, the more expedient alert would be 911 or the 1323 number. This, I mean, yes, this allows for some, you're transmitting, but again, even once we receive that message, then it's how it's triaged and moved from there. So that's all taking time. I mean, in a situation where there is something happening in front of you, the most expedient way of alerting the police would be calling us directly or 911.
what happens if somebody calls from the tips from campus about a crime in progress?
Well, as of right now,
Well, with this system.
with this system, it's a text or an email, so it would go through this system, it would come to us.
And then you would contact
Oh, we work with SUNY now if things like that occur, whether it's anonymous or not.
Right. But does New Paltz actually respond? Would you respond, or would you contact campus police and have them respond?
It would depend on the call. If it's something that we would feel that it would, you know, have the need of our agency being there as well, we would respond as well as notifying them and assist them. You know, it all
Case
depends
by
on the
case.
call. Yeah.
Mhm.
Otherwise, if it's not something of needing extra backup or assistance, we would just contact them and say, this is what we have, and they would handle it.
The only other comment that I would have is in terms of the cost. You know, it's not just the cost of the application, but then you've got an impact on personnel resources and an impact on infrastructure, and all of that, I think, has to be looked at.
Well, I think that,
comprehensively.
yeah, I think that one of the big things about this program is, again, we would have to see how the email would come in. And my thought process would be dispatch would be the proper channel because they're there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So if somebody is always working the desk. So having a email that's set up for it to roll over to that, so the dispatcher will get it right on the screen, you know, that, hey, somebody just sent the tip in. That would be the best way, and it wouldn't require any more manpower to monitor it that way. And then call by them. You know, our officers, you know, they bounce from call to call sometimes, and that's how it works. And if we get a tip that we're tied up on a serious accident or something, the dispatch then, just like a call that comes in to dispatch, would get rolled over to the state or sheriffs and tell them, hey, we need assistance on this call. We're tied up right now.
Yeah. And I think you had mentioned that there's a yearly contract and then a discounted rate for a more extended contract.
Correct. And again, even talking with the officials from the Kingston Police Department, this is in no way, shape, or form, they have, in their public relations, they're not looking at this in place of 911 or directly to Kingston Police Department. This is a way for tips, for anonymous tips to be generated on crimes. Then if it's an immediate need for the police, you should be calling one of those other numbers. It's not to take the place of that.
Amy, did you have?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I think that if we challenge ourselves, we could probably come up with some organic ways to probably like close to free or for free to get the word out there that if you see something suspect or you see criminal activity or there's something going on in the neighborhood, this is the number you call. We could have signage in the village, maybe in some areas that are kind of known for some things that shouldn't be going on. We could maybe get a PDF made. It would probably take a graphic artist about 15 minutes to make a PDF. And we could put it on our local cable access channel and also maybe get it on the SUNY campus channel. And that way, you know, cable access TV watchers know, you know, if I see something, the cops really, they do want to know. And they want to help us. And if we don't give them the information and help, maybe we could save you guys a lot of hours and frustration if somebody could just say, you know, one thing to you about somebody or something that happened.
Well, like I said, I think the biggest challenge or misperception about our tip line is that it is not anonymous. And so I think perhaps that is the first hurdle we need to confront before, you know, if we don't necessarily need to do this, if the fear of the general public is that it's not anonymous, then perhaps we need to do something to ensure them that it is, you know, here is how it works.
I think that's really true because I've called for, you know, variety of things, and every time I call, I'm asked, what is your name? And they take my name and my phone number, and it's been across the board, and I actually didn't know until right now that if I don't want, I mean, and I, of course, don't really have a problem with saying who I am personally, but if I didn't want to, I didn't know till you said to call and say, I want this to be anonymous.
Well,
so I think that could be, what you're saying is true.
Yeah, that might be the cheapest, the cheapest of the cheapest things to do.
Right. I mean, and I appreciate it because I would get a call back, you know, following up with me on what was going on. So I didn't really mind doing that, and I appreciate it. But
we do encourage you to give us your name for
Right.
that reason.
Exactly.
You know, we do like to follow up with the callers the best we can.
Yeah.
But if we do have a question to help clarify something, we'll call.
Right.
Just because you give the information doesn't mean that we share your information with the suspect or whatever. Obviously,
Right.
we don't
Obviously
do that.
not.
But you know, but it's you know, but we allow and handle even an anonymous call as a serious call. However, if you don't have an actual complainant and a name to go with it, depending on the call, sometimes there's not much we can do as a police force because
If it sounds serious, you could check it out.
we will check it out anyway. But if somebody calls and says that, you know, I want to remain anonymous, but this person is doing this or that, we can only follow up to the best of what we see. If we have a person that says, my name is so-and-so, I'm willing to sign a complaint if necessary, now we can make an arrest even based on your complaint. You know, so it depends on circumstances. But, so we encourage you to give us a name, but if you don't, we handle every complaint as if it's real.
I think the fear that you're describing with the phone system, I think that you may still have that even with this. I mean, people are not necessarily going to believe that you're really
Right.
anonymous. And so, you know, that may be a reason in and of itself that this is cost prohibitive. You know, it's not, you're going to expend that money, and people are still not going to believe that they're anonymous.
I mean, just to piggyback off that, I really think if people want the police, they call the police. I think
agree.
that in that time you need the police. You know you get plenty of friends when you want the police.
Okay.
Thanks for doing the research.
Yeah.
No problem.
If the commission has any other questions that you want us to look into or follow up on, just send an email, and we'll be happy to have more information for another meeting. But I think in the meantime, we should see and monitor how it is working with the other agencies.
Okay. Okay, that works. That's fair.
Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming.
Off to the
meeting,
Baseball
too.
Association. Have a good one.
Enjoy.
Yeah.
Thanks, Rob.
Yep.
Thank you. Take care. Thank you for switching that
Yep.
around on the agenda.
Yep. Yeah.
Is there anything else handed out besides the agenda?
Do you have your report?
Nope, just the, do you have the new agenda?
I just got this. April 11th.
There was an extra one. Is that the
There
lead
was-
grant?
Yeah,
there
it was
were
right here.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that,
It was? That's my
yeah,
question.
that's it, yeah. Yes. Chief?
For this month's monthly report, we did not have any defensive action reports for this month. I do have 2 accommodation letters to discuss, one of which is in regards to a phone call that I received in regards to Officer Sisko, Officer Quigley, Officer Bolson, Officer Fuco, and Officer Stroh. On 2 different occasions, the calling party stated that officers responded to her home for a situation that was taking place. On both occasions, she said they were all very professional, courteous, and handled the situation great. She further stated that she very much appreciates our agency and what we do. There's 5 officers listed here. 3 officers responded at one time and 2 officers at another time during the incident. The other one came from one of our dispatchers in regards to a phone call that she received, thanking Officer Knoth, who's our canine officer handler, Officer Bolson, and Sergeant Bunce. These are all night officers. While on patrol, they found an open door at one of the nursery schools in the area. During that time, they checked the building to make sure it was not being burglarized. There was no one trespassing. The owner was notified to come and secure the door. And just thanking and to thank the officers for their job that they do every day and keeping a watch, and appreciates everyone watching out for her business.
Is that it? Okay. The lieutenant's contract and the police union contract we
Can I
had.
go back to
Oh.
the reports?
Yep,
I have a question.
yep.
Chief, I noticed in the reports that foot patrol is going down.
Yep.
And it's going down considerable from what it was last year. And I was just wondering what the situation was.
Well, we've been down 3 officers and, well, not counting the lieutenant, but 3 officers, and that has a big effect on the ability to have officers that are, walking as much on the street. We are, at this point, one of our C line has just been backfilled, but we're still down 2 officers.
That was my question. How many officers are you down?
Well, right now, we're down the lieutenant's position and 2 officers. So we're down 3 total. which actually we're down 3 officers from what we had last year. The new budget, we gave up an extra position, so technically we were down 4 officers, now we're 3, but only 2 is budgeted to replace.
Well, I can say that I saw Officer Kraus walking the beat today, so that was good to see. He was walking up Main Street from the, what is it, Water Street Market up, so I presume he
They're
was
still
on
out
his way
there.
to
Yeah, they're still
downtown.
out there. You know, they just, you know, their foot patrols sometimes get broken up because of having to respond to calls. You know, it's just, you know, we try to do what we can with the manpower. You know, you have 2 officers working in the town, you know, for the 42 some square miles. It's difficult for them just to be, you know, walking foot patrol. We also started the foot patrols for security checks through the schools. So that takes some time also with them walking through the schools.
Well, wouldn't you have that in the foot patrol report then?
I don't believe so. I think they have that listed a different way. I'll have to look at that.
Because
though,
I didn't
to be
see
sure.
anything, it was like, remember we found the 2 pieces in the reports once before that, you know, it really belongs in one place so people can see that there's actually being done, as opposed to trying to find it foot patrol A and then looking for foot patrol B.
Yeah, in fact, I was studying your monthly statistics report, and I did happen to notice the one thing that really stuck out to me was that your officers that do more foot patrolling are making more arrests. And I mean, they're making double and triple the arrests of the other officers, the ones that are doing double and triple the foot patrol. And as a village resident and somebody that lives on the corner of Main Street and North Chestnut, just from the bottom of my heart, I love seeing you guys walking up and down the street. I do. And as a shop owner, when I look outside my store and I see the back of an officer walking up the hill or coming down or something going on at Mobile and you guys are like on it, it makes me feel really good to be down there in my business and with my family. And I like to thank you for what we have, but ask, now the weather's getting warmer out and the kids are all coming out and it's already starting to get really wild. And I really hope to see you guys a lot downtown in the coming season.
We'll definitely keep an eye on it.
Yeah.
Bikes.
Actually, funny you ask about bikes. We,
Bike patrol.
I wasn't going to say anything about that.
Officer Shafrick, who is a bike instructor and has been in charge of the program for a lot of years, and then recently another sergeant took that over who's now retired. But Officer Shafrick, I spoke to him just about 2 weeks ago. He put an email out to everyone, again, to, you know, whoever is still certified to get their equipment up. We have a lot of new officers.
Do you need to be certified to be a
Yes.
police officer and bike?
Yes.
You do?
Yeah, there's a actual bike school. You learn how to ride your bike up steps, down steps.
Cool.
Yeah, yeah. How to do takedowns from the bike, so if somebody's running. Or,
Right.
Yeah. So it's, of course, he is a certified instructor. We're going to be working actually with SUNY Police because they have some officers that they want to go through the school as well. So you know, we're going to put a school on probably.
So will you be
in the near
keeping
future.
your bicycles downtown?
The bikes we keep downtown now, and the officer would park downtown and, and grab a bike and you know, patrol the area. Again, it depends on the manpower. If we have 2 guys working, I can't have just one officer in the car handling a domestic on Plutarch and the other officer's on his bicycle. So, you know, again, same thing with the
Sure.
motorcycle. It's just 2 officers. There has to be at least a 3rd working, whether it's a sergeant or somebody, before the officer goes out on a motorcycle. Again, because of you get tied up with an arrest, you have a transport. You need the ability to transport people you can't on a motorcycle.
No, I understand.
Can you imagine
Was.
that picture on the paper?
Steve?
Yes,
Yeah.
I could picture that.
Only in Newport.
Are we going to talk about those positions under new business for interviews?
No. Okay. No,
It's a different time then.
that's a different thing.
Okay.
On the reports?
No, what are we talking about?
Well, I know, he was saying we could talk about those positions. I
No,
just wondered if
he
that's-
jumped under new business
I went all
and
the
is
way to
looking at
about-
interviews.
Oh, interview, oh, I got
That's a
you.
different, that's procedural as
Right.
opposed to talking about people and filling posts.
Okay.
And
Got
that would be done in executive session anyway.
Randall?
Yes.
I missed it when we adopted the agenda. I'd like to make an amendment to the agenda now, if I can, please.
Okay,
I'd like to, under new business, make an amendment that we elect the new permanent chair.
Well, I was going to put that's coming under old business, if you
Well,
look on the...
wherever it wasn't
Yeah,
on the
no.
sheet of paper, and
No,
I
it's
realized
on-
I
it's
missed
on-
it because it's on the sheet that we wrote.
Yeah, no, it's on the agenda, the current agenda now, at least the one that I'm looking at, the one that I
Nominations
handed
and
out.
election of chairman.
Old business, the first
No,
item,
got you. Okay.
okay?
Yep.
Chief, is that everything? Any other, is that your report?
Yes.
Any other questions for the chief on his report?
New business.
No? Okay. The lieutenant and PBA contract update, all I can basically say is that the chief and I participated in that at the end of March. Can't tell you anything else. But we will perhaps have an opportunity, if you all have ideas about some things that you would like us to bring to those negotiations. They may fly, they may not, but if you want to talk about those, we can do that in executive session and pass those on to the attorney, but we can't talk about them out here, and we can't tell you what was going on in that room. So that's...
The only thing we can
that.
say is that, they will schedule meetings, and we can say when there's going to be meetings and, for discussion of the contracts. As far as the lieutenant's contract, they're waiting for him to bring in Detective Sergeant Lucchese. He's been the one that's been selected to be the lieutenant. It's all been agreed, approved, town board, and also the commission. However, it was just waiting for the contract to be negotiated. So that has been the holdup for the last several months, because they have not yet met. So we're hoping that takes place soon, and help alleviate some of the stacking of paper on the desk.
Speaking of paper, I just wanted to ask a question. Is it possible to provide the reports as a PDF instead of...
We'll get to that.
Okay.
Well, that's all coming up underneath stuff here. There's a method to the madness.
Okay.
Frightening
That
but true.
question. Save paper.
Parade committee, do you want to...
I mean, I can give,
do you wanna-
sure, I've
yeah,
got all the
wanna-
notes here.
And actually, let me give a little
Yeah,
bit of context about
absolutely.
that. There's an issue with how parades are approved and the requirements that the police participate in, blocking the streets and so on and so forth, and the costs that are associated with the parades. Last year, under Ira's leadership, we looked at the form and we gave some suggestions. I don't know where those went, but they are back on the table again, and we sort of looked at them, and I think we're going to look at them at a later meeting. But the town and the village and the chief and I were included in this new parade subcommittee, and we're working on trying to develop a new process for how parades are approved and what parades will be allowed and in town and how they'll be paid for and all of that stuff. So that's the context, and
Yeah.
you can...
Yeah, I mean, the town and village have basically decided that anything that needs some kind of intermunicipal agreement or anything we need to work on together, we're going to send to a subcommittee. So myself and Sally and Kitty and Kevin are on the subcommittee, and Randall and the chief were also there. And I think it actually was productive. Yeah, it's really great what we can do when we break it down a little bit. So what we decided is first to consider what is a community parade versus an outside of the community coming into the community parade. And that I think is going to be an important distinction in terms of what we're really willing to sponsor with tax dollars versus what we should charge people for, because this is obviously a costly thing, but we feel like parades are community, and that's kind of what we started with, was parades are community events, and that is one of the things that we consider them to be, and we want people to be able to hold them, and that anyone can apply for a parade, and then from that application it would either go to one of two categories, which would fall under the community, or something that we would be charging for. And then the other way that we looked at it, well, one of the things is that we didn't really factor this in at the town and village board meeting, is that the DPW is often, the Village Department of Public Works is often a part of this in terms of manpower, setting up the barricades and blocking off streets. So the village brought its numbers for that, and we realized that some of them are a definite break even, some of them less so, but that maybe we can work it out to have a more even number of people, whether it's officers or DPW members, to be able to offset the cost for both the village and the town, so we can both be contributing the same amount. But the other thing is separating out the idea of the parade portion of it versus the event portion of it. For instance, the Little League parade is obviously, the parade part is where they're blocking off the street and marching in the street, and then they have an event at Hasbrook Park, and these are two separate things where the police aren't necessarily, not that they're never needed for events, but they're not necessarily needed for an event, and that if we say that some of the cost of the parade is something we will sponsor, but the event might not be, and the event could be part of what the committee sponsors. So we're looking at whether or not that'll be one form broken into two parts or two direct forms, because right now we just have a parade/event form, and it's kind of just very confusing, the runaround of whether it goes to the village first or the town first, and people are saying, but I'm holding it in the village, why does it have to go to the town, even though it's pretty clearly spelled out on the form that it has to come to the town, and then it'll be sent to the police for a safety check, and then come to the village, because usually the parades are held on village streets, but it doesn't mean that the town shouldn't know about it.
And what about the insurance? Like where the insurance is gonna go?
Definitely, that's a huge part of it. I mean, that's one of the things in terms of who can apply for a parade. That's one of the listed here. The application criteria is having insurance for it. And one of the things we talked about, and we kind of decided against basing things on, was whether or not the insurer, whoever is, the insurance carrier, would be how we define whether or not it's a community parade. But then we said that just ends up being very complicated, because say you and I wanted to organize a parade that is based in the community, but we're doing it for some organization that might have its headquarters in North Carolina, but the money is going to somewhere local. Like, it just becomes a more complicated thing. Mm-hmm. So we decided that we would look at it more based on things like the Memorial Day parade. That is obviously a community parade. Mm-hmm. And that's something that we would like to fund, and, it's something that is, paying respect. So it's a different type of thing. But, and the Halloween parade has a lot of local involvement, a lot of local residents. It attracts people outside of the community as well. But, we feel like these are real community events. And, I mean, of course, we can look at these things and come up with our own solution, and then maybe there'll be an outcry that the Halloween parade is not a community event, and we'll revisit it. I highly doubt that'll happen, but you never know. So I think this, at least, we're moving forward with these things, and we were saying that the certificate of insurance should name both the village and the town, though. So that's one of the major things. And we're having another meeting next week, and we will hopefully have. That will hopefully be our last meeting on this, but we'll see if we have to continue. But I doubt there'll be more than that after, anyway.
Ariana, how does the state get involved in this?
There's I think it really depends on the time that the street is closed for. Like the 125th anniversary, the proposal was to close the street all day, essentially, and that requires New York State Department of Transportation approval. Mm. Something that is 15 minutes for a street closure where the traffic really, kind of follows it or can be rerouted momentarily, but doesn't really need detour signs, essentially, then we do not need to get permission from the New York State Department of Transportation. And at a recent Transportation Implementation Committee meeting, I believe this came up, and the representative from the New York State DOT said that villages and towns have different jurisdictions over streets, but he didn't go into a lot of the details as to what that is, but maybe that is part of it, in terms of, how long the closure is. But that's something I would like to learn more about myself, just for our knowledge. I think it's important.
They're not parading in the village. They're parading through the village.
Right.
It's like with the college. The college is state property. It has nothing to do, which is why their officers can't do a lot of things that they should. These people are not say, well, I live in a village and, but, you're on state property, and that's why I was asking the
Right, 'cause
question.
it's a state
Because if
road.
something happens, we get involved in all kinds of lawsuits. Somebody says, hey, this is a state road. Guess what? They got a lot of money. I'm going to sue them for $5 million. And then
Right.
the state comes back and turns around and says to the town and village, guess what? You're paying for that because you didn't have permission.
Well, I think that's part of the insurance part of it.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying, I'm
you
just
know.
asking.
But
'cause,
yeah, but that is a good question, and I think maybe this committee should come up with
That's
a
why-
more public answer for that question.
That's why I was
Yeah.
asking, because I said that
I'm
the
gonna put it in
potential.
the committee notes, in fact.
The potential for a lawsuit from the state to us, if it's not followed, is, and you're talking about people who sue the state, you're talking a lot of money.
Any other questions for on the parade stuff?
The only thing that I wanted to say, because I know a lot of people, I think even with the Little League group, the Pride Parade, I'm hearing that, why is the police department turning down, these organizations, like
Right.
we're being blamed for it. And I just want to...
It's not your fault.
I just want to say it's not our fault. During the process of doing our budget, and presenting it, and we worked very hard on it with the commission as well, with Commissioner Margolis and Leverett. And we were, when we put in for the overtime amounts, the town board, and they even had voted on it back then, that we're only going to approve 2 parades, and that's all we were being budgeted for. So then, as these came to me, I said, well, there's not money budgeted for these events because the town board said it's only these 2. Once that went out, and then the pressure started coming from these organizations, that's where this talk started up again.
Right.
And the town board also realizes, I think, that there are important aspects of all these parades. The truth of the matter is, we have over 20-some events through the course of the year that we would supply maybe 1 officer for. Some of these 5K runs that they have going on everywhere, we'd supply an officer for the rail trail even, and we would budget for those things because they are community events. But some of this, with the way the economy is, has to change, and
Right.
so we have to look at, well, safety has to be our priority, and everything else that comes after that will be, based on what the town can afford. So it's not that the police department doesn't want to do it. I love events. I love being with the public and the community and the parades, and I work a lot of it myself. But so it's a money issue, and hopefully it's going to be worked out where the village and town together will be able to accomplish this goal. So.
Yeah, I'm pretty confident we will.
So I just want to stop the hate mail.
That's never going to happen.
Thank you.
Okay. On to old business. As you know, we now have a full complement of commissioners, and I'd like to officially, now that we're all here, welcome Amy and Bruce to the table. Last year, at the end of the, or the beginning of January.
As of January 1st.
As of January 1st,
January
I was, because of the way that the terms expire, we elect a temporary chair. I was elected temporary chair, so that now that we are a full group, you have the opportunity to elect your own chair. So at this point in time, I will open nominations for the chairmanship for the Police Commission for the 2013 term. Mr. Margolis.
Commissioner, I nominate Commissioner Randall for the 2013 term as permanent chair of the Police Commission.
I can second that.
Third it,
Third.
fourth it.
Okay, so there's no vote. No. All in
Shoo-in.
favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you, guys.
It's the only way to keep you quiet.
Yeah. But I put it all on paper. Park Point. I think I've filled you all. You've seen the bevy of emails that have been going back and forth. We actually, the chief and I met with Gina from the rescue squad and Chief McGuire from the fire department and Ira, and we sat down and talked to them about the direction and the concerns that we had with respect to the particular project. And I think it's important to note that, me personally, I have no real objection to Park Point being developed. If the college needs housing, I'm all for them providing the housing that they need for their students. The issue for me, as a member who sits on the commission and who has to work with the chief in making sure they stay within their budget, and he dodges the darts and bullets from the town board and people when they can't do things because they don't have the money, kind of like the parades. Park Point potentially will add additional burden to our police department, which in turn adds costs to our police department. And the fact that they build a facility for to house students and additional faculty is totally fine. No objection. My only objection and my only concern, and it's not necessarily an objection because it's not something that we have any control over per se, so my only issue is the fact that to have a for-profit entity come in, build a facility, and pay a pilot instead of taxes for that facility impacts the police department. And that is why I have chosen to let us wade into this pond, because I think it is partially some of our responsibility to make sure that our police department is protected financially and has the resources that it needs to accommodate any huge new facility. So, it is, my view is not anti the school building housing. It is the additional burden that will be placed on our police department, recognizing the financial hardship that the town and village finds itself in, with people not wanting to pay an inordinate amount of taxes. So this is an opportunity for us to say, have at it, but these things cost us money. And so that's where I come down on.
I wonder if you have any new figures for us tonight, Randall.
Funny you should ask. Ira, the math man, Commissioner Margolis, actually, I'll just pass those down, came up with some new figures for us that are just a tad bit more than, yeah, they're just a tad bit more.
Were you able to get any projections from fire and from the rescue service?
We have gotten some projections from the rescue squad. Fire is in a little different position. I mean, they're more equipment, and you work more closely with them,
right.
so
Kevin
it is
and I
more
have talked
equipment,
about
right?
this
So it's they're more equipment, and they're lucky, quote unquote, because they don't necessarily have payroll, because our fire department is volunteer, but they have equipment.
Right.
And they have maintenance.
And they have limited human resources.
That's
Right.
So
Exactly.
I know now our volunteer fire department is stretched for volunteers. I understand they're looking for new volunteers. And I wonder if they'll be able to sustain themselves with added facility, with an added 750 individuals to put out fires for.
Yeah, well, we've talked about that, and we are going to be in a meeting on Monday with Michael Calamano, who is the planning board chair, and the emergency services. And I think that's a really good start. However, I believe it's probably something that should have been done beforehand, and it's kind of sort of after the fact. And again, it's important for me to think, I look at the police commission as far as Park Point is concerned, you know, the police commission and the planning board and the town board, I think our interests should be mutual because we're all here to work for the betterment of the community. And so, I don't have a beef with the planning board or anything like that. It's just that the process should have been perhaps more inclusive earlier on, and there's probably some fault that lies with the commission. Perhaps a dormant, or however you want to call it.
I think the mess up, if you'll say, was that the chief was under the impression that the campus police was going to be able to handle any problems at Park Point, and that we were going to be a secondary agency in New Paltz, and that was how the project was presented.
Well, I think it was a truth because when it was originally, going into scoping documents and all those public hearings, I think that was actually true when the campus, before these statewide contracts came into place, that said that campus police could not come off of the SUNY campuses, and I think that is what that changed last fall. And up until then, everybody, the college president and even the SUNY police chief, Duke Otkin, was saying, yeah, we can do this, and they also have a collaborative relationship with us here, but now these union contracts just say otherwise, and I think the administration on campus came to that conclusion later.
Marietta, the only thing about that is, yes, what you say may be the timeline.
Right.
However, when the Wilmerites submitted their proposals to our planning board, everything that we are talking about was in effect.
Right.
So they knew that their proposals were not real and not justified. They submitted them anyway. That's the only point I want very clear. Yeah, we understand that the chief was under a certain impression. But when Wilmerite came before the planning board, they knew that all their information was wrong. The way I look at it, even during this, hey, it will cost you $5,000 a year. This was information that they knew was wrong at the time they submitted it. Like, that's why we're doing our little thing now, because nobody asked us. They asked the chief how many more guys you need. He said, with the campus police, maybe one, maybe two. I don't remember what the chief said. But this was all distorted when Wilmerite came before the town.
Well,
as you can see from these figures.
Well, we've got some figures, and we've asked some questions for Wilmerite that they have yet to respond to, and perhaps if we ask them through the planning board on Monday, the planning board will go to Wilmerite and ask them, which I don't necessarily think should be the case. We should be able to get that information from them with a direct question. And I think one of the most important questions came to me from the chief, and it was, how are the relationships working in the other communities with the police forces that they've had?
Right.
And
That's a good question.
and those are things that we can use to help make sure that our information and numbers are accurate, and what assumptions they were making. And if we don't have the input from them, there's no guarantee that, because they've operated those facilities, we haven't. So the onus, in my view, is on Wilmerite to provide us the information that we need as a commission to make and develop the right numbers.
Have we formally asked them for that information?
The first set of emails that I began sending out asked those specific questions. And, oddly enough, I also find it odd that we're talking to their business development person as opposed to their head of security. We deal with security and safety of our community. So, it would make sense that perhaps we not be talking to the person whose interest is to get the project up and running, but the people who have responsibility for the security and safety of those facilities. And that, person hasn't been put forth. So,
if I may, I just want to throw my own personal consideration of this. we're not talking about a not-for-profit organization. We're talking about a profit organization. We're talking about a profit organization that if they had to pay us what we need, we'd probably have to raise their rents by maybe $10 a month or $15 a month. And you know what? I don't want to subsidize SUNY to say, well, we have this, but it's only going to cost you Y. You know, let SUNY tell their people, well, you know, the rent, no, I don't have to subsidize their rent to, let's say, $150 a month. If they have to pay, it's kind of like Woodland Ponds. If they had to pay the stuff, it would have cost the residents maybe another $10, $20 a month. You know, big deal, I'm sorry. You know, why should we have to subsidize? That's just the way because I feel very strongly about the fact that we shouldn't be subsidizing the students' housing, because we do it now. We do it now if you look at the way it's done through the town. And I have nothing against the students, please, you know, don't misunderstand me. I just don't want to pay their bills. I got my own bills to pay.
Well, it's not even the students' bills, it's the for-profit agency. We're not even subsidizing the students' rent, we're subsidizing
Good
their
point.
profits.
Good point.
That's how I see it.
Our local landlords are all paying full taxes, school taxes, property taxes on their dwellings. So why shouldn't a multi-family complex like this be charged in the same way and assessed in the same way?
Well, you know, one of the things that, and I don't know if you've had an opportunity to do it, if you've called. Okay. There's that, and then one of the other things that I wanted to look at, and I don't know if you had an opportunity to do it, and if you can eventually get to it, if you haven't, the number of calls and the calls. I want to see what we were told when Woodland Pond came, you know, the number of calls, because as we sat around and talked, it was like, you know, we were told it was going to be this, and then when this became a reality, it was in fact that, as opposed to this. So what I would like to see is what that discrepancy was between what we were told with Woodland Pond and what it actually is now as it relates to the number of police calls and so on and so forth, because I think that's also helpful information for us to have. And my understanding is that Woodland Pond is probably about the same number of rooms or homes or apartments or whatever. So, but you know.
And I think
The
that's...
demographics are going to be a lot different.
That's what I was going to say.
The demographics are going to be a lot different, but I can tell you that, you know, in talking to folks at Rescue and so on and so forth, and here we get calls for, you know, microwaves going off, and I can guarantee you got kids who are burning popcorn in dorm rooms, and we get those kind of calls, you know. So I mean, the demographics might be different, but there are similar,
I agree with you,
situations.
Sure.
I was thinking maybe a healthy way to come up with some kind of ideas about the impact would be to study the calls coming out of Southside. Because it's a similar demographic. We have the students living in Southside, and you know, I have nothing against students or parties, but there's a lot of partying over there, and a lot of calls over there, and a lot of different kinds of things going on over there. And I would think, and it's a lot smaller. I mean, this Southside is probably, what, 25% the size of this project that they're proposing. And if we took all the action and all the things that we have to do for Southside, and we multiplied it by 4 or 5 times, I think the figures would be quite alarming.
Is it expected that
Speaking to
that SUNY will increase its enrollments? That this is part of a drive to increase enrollment? Well, I mean, the reason I'm asking is it an expectation that students living off campus will now live on campus, or that
Well, I think
that the village's population is going to increase by
SUNY
750?
says they're not going to increase roll, all right? Now, personal opinion, if you want to believe that, I got a bridge in Brooklyn that I want to sell you.
Yeah. Well, I'm
Because this
inclined
is
to
an
agree with you.
opportunity to make money by having an additional 600 enrollees. I mean, right now, as we found out the other day, they did manage to find 100 beds for transfer students, somehow. I mean, the landlords, you know, people people aren't going to move from the landlords to this thing, and then, you know, there'll be this whole demographic shift. I'm not saying they're not telling the truth. I just can't see a profit-making organization that's tax exempt not wanting to increase their enrollment, you know, and say, wow, you know, we now have 8,000 students or 6,600 students at a cost of, what, $20,000, $30,000 per student coming in. That's, you know, I'm not saying they are, I'm just saying.
No, and maybe we should
It leaves a lot to be.
But it's an important variable.
Right. Well, they say they aren't upping enrollment, and their projections show that enrollment is not increasing. But I know that one of the in-betweens is that a lot of part-time students are becoming full-time students, and so I think that's a big difference, where they're not upping the overall enrollment, but the number of people who are here more often, taking more classes, so the workload on the professors is certainly increasing.
Fewer commuters, is that it? Fewer commuters, maybe?
Well, and that's what this is targeted towards, is the commuter students who, in my opinion, live at home because it's cheaper, not because they can't find housing here. But it's basically saying that, you know, all these transfer students they couldn't offer housing to. And I was in the meeting with Ira where they said, we're doing an experiment where we're going to give these 100 beds to transfer students, and they said that the number of people, the experiment showed that the number of people that put down their deposit to say they definitely wanted to come here, go to SUNY New Paltz and live in the dorm was increased. So, I mean, I don't know if I can't imagine that in the future enrollment will not increase, but he cited all these places where enrollment is decreasing across SUNY schools and community colleges, and yeah, I mean, but I didn't see the article. Oh, I'm sorry, Don Christian, the college president.
Okay.
Yeah. So I didn't see the articles, but he said that there's articles almost every day on these things. So.
I've seen articles that go the other way.
Interesting.
Yeah. SUNY schools versus private schools, especially because of the cost of tuition of private schools.
Right. I mean, that makes sense. I
Yeah.
think that SUNY New Paltz has done well for that very reason.
And I think it's also reflected in the acceptance standards as well, which have gone up.
Exactly. Yeah.
So they're more selective because they can be.
That's the interesting thing about the project, is as we don't have a separate assessment for anybody. Everybody pays the exact same rate, whether you're a business, whether you're what this would be called a dormitory, a 411 dormitory, whatever. They pay the same rate as the poor guy who's sitting down on his $100,000 house. The rate is the same. We don't have two different rates. So they're coming in here, they're paying the rate. They don't have a split rate like a lot of towns do, you know, for dormitories and for businesses and whatever. So that, you know, they're making out like bandits, just in my opinion. And again, I have my own bills I want to pay. I don't need to pay SUNY's, which has got all these big fancy donators, that's all. Plus, the interesting factor is what I'm curious about. Since the UPD controls everything that goes on in that campus in terms of housing, the dormitory, they can walk into any dorm or whatever. How many of those people in the dormitory are going to say, hey, you know what, if we go into this building, we don't get hassled? And they will hassle us as the outsiders because they're not under any kind of control aside from the NPPD, and you know they can only respond after the fact, whereas the UPD can respond before the fact. If somebody starts getting noisy, they go tell them to shut up. They don't need to, you know. It's a whole hassle.
Or are you going to keep quiet?
Well, you guys were going back and forth, so I don't want to interrupt anything. I'll back up to where you started with, for Woodland Ponds, I was not the chief when they were doing that project, obviously. I don't have the paperwork from the planning board or the building department. So maybe that's who would have their, you know, whatever they were projecting then to indicate, you know, what Chief Sapone had said back then and what they had thought that the call volume would be. As far as the checking the other two Park Point projects, one of which is in Syracuse, the other one's in Rochester. I am waiting for some calls back because I have not been able to get a clear number of calls. What I did find is Rochester is actually, although it has a Rochester address, is actually handled by Monroe County Sheriff's Department. because
It's not on
actually.
their campus.
It's not on a campus, but it's not in Rochester either, technically, by the lay of the land. It's kind of like a New Paltz address here, but yet it's
Gardner.
Gardner or
Gardner,
something.
yeah.
So now I have a call out to the sheriff's department, and the sheriff's department, they really don't have, the contact is very difficult to get the person that will give you the statistics of calls. So.
Well, I can
I'm-
tell you that the head of
process.
security for Wilmerite, I believe, came from the Monroe County Police Department or something or other. So,
Right, he was the one that was supposed to come and meet us, so we got his biography.
perhaps, yes.
Yes.
So we knew that.
Perhaps.
And Syracuse, the Park Point of Syracuse, it actually borders the college property, which I think would be very similar to us here.
But it's
Have-
on the college property,
There's a
isn't it?
portion of it on their property. They handle some of the calls there, but not all. And also, they handle the caseload of that, which are students, where it's also open to the public and non-students, not even faculty. So I'm interested in to find out if, well, what was the original agreement for it, or what they projected to be there.
Well, that's what we
if it's like
asked,
us.
right.
And what if you don't fill it with students or faculty, then you open it up to the public.
Well,
You know?
they've said that.
didn't even know
They have said that if they don't fill the space with students or faculty, they have the option to open it up to the general public. So, it's a win-win.
Oh, so
It's-
then-
It's like, if I don't get enough SUNY students to go in there, and I got 500 vacant apartments, I can,
The proposals
Open
for
it up.
the college, and that's the selling point about the college students having housing. But ultimately, with that number of beds, there's a good possibility that.
you're not gonna get them, and a
The
lot of
original
kids.
scoping document.
That's a
rental
question
rate
I'd like to
at
get
their
an answer to, is
Yeah, I don't
if
think they-
they are
that's what
entitled
it's
to the
gonna be.
pilot,
It's
because it's
They don't-
dormitories, and because
they
Syracuse,
don't,
remember this law kind of got rushed through in the middle of
We
the
got
night.
two conversations going on at the
If
same
they're
time.
entitled to the pilot because they're a dormitory, suppose it doesn't get filled, and they start taking people from the outside,
Right.
are they still going to be entitled to the pilot? Because our landlords aren't entitled to pilots for their dormitories.
Right.
No,
They're not dormitories, yeah.
The question that I had asked that the chief and I were discussing is whether Wilmerite sets the rental rate at their discretion, or is it somehow tied to dormitory rates at SUNY New Paltz?
I'm
We
pretty sure
have
they
no
set the
idea.
rental rate themselves.
Yeah.
So they could change
And
it?
if they don't have enough beds filled, they'll lower the rental rate to fill those beds,
Well,
I'm sure.
let me throw this out to you. We have a meeting on Monday. Between now and Monday, if you have questions, pop me an email, and we'll toss them out at our meeting, and hopefully we can get answers.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say one thing. I don't know if people watching at home know that this piece of paper that we have here says that we think that Wilmerite is going to be costing our town police department over $12.5 million over the next 25 years.
Our taxpayers.
Costing our taxpayers for police services, and that's just for the police portion.
Right. Is the meeting just with the planning board chair?
I think so.
I believe so,
right?
along with emergency services.
Yeah,
Right, and the other.
yeah, it's just the planning board, so I guess
It's
they're.
it's not at a planning board meeting, so,
No.
No.
okay.
No. So if you all have questions, if you shoot them to me before Monday, because the meeting is early morning, mid-morning. So by Sunday, that would be great if you have any questions.
I would like to add one more thing. Commissioner Cohen had mentioned about comparisons to Southside. And I know we looked at the numbers of Southside, but the interesting thing, and you actually brought it up with saying it's the size of Southside compared to this complex is about 25% smaller than what this complex is going to be. I don't know if you were in New Paltz when UG was next door. Now it's called, I gotta get in my office more, Windsor Apartments?
Windsor
Uh-huh.
Birds, yeah.
Windsor Parks, okay. I had to think about it for a second, but it used to be called UG. they both were college housing. And the parties that used to go down there when I first started working here, I mean, there was keg parties in the middle of the lots, and we were breaking up parties and, you know, all sorts of melee down there. So, again, even that is now only about 50% of what this project is going to be. And it's something to really think about, because if it is going to be all students and faculty and even people from the outside of the school, that it's just community members or people coming to the community, and if it becomes, and depending on how they, they accept applications, they look like they have an interesting process of allowing people to live at their locations. But depending on how that all works out and what you have as a crowd, it could be, yeah, a very nice, quiet place, or it could be where we're there 10 times a day, you know, and then some.
Renters from hell.
So it's an interesting concept because of the dynamics of the property.
And even the site plan would have some impact on how well you can enforce the law, am I right?
Yeah.
And
Areas where
there's,
people
and there's,
congregate,
you know, there's going to be retail in there, and there's, you know, I mean,
No, I
so.
think they canceled.
there's no retail.
There's no retail?
Yeah,
I thought there
They
was going to be a
canceled
little
it?
store. They cancel that?
yeah.
I thought just recently they said that they were planning on maybe just a small store now.
Yeah,
It wasn't going to be a
small
big
store.
store, but it was going to be like a little
And a
convenient.
gym.
That was my understanding.
How many
small.
stories?
4,
4 stories.
yeah. Yeah, and I believe they're getting a variance for that.
To do that in terms of the fire department being able to
Does our ladder
respond to that.
fit on that?
I believe so, because the ladder is for, like Lenape Hall, which is 4 stories.
The interesting thing also, in looking at the other 2 projects, Rochester is smaller. That only has, I think, 300 rooms, or about, it said something like 266 beds,
Really?
but it also said
It
300 rooms,
looks
so I don't know what that
monstrous
is.
when you see the
Well,
photos of
Syracuse
it.
is
So that's
huge.
less than half.
Yeah, Syracuse is a big complex with many businesses and stores in it. I think there's even a Starbucks in it and things like that.
It's like in the
Barnes and
city.
Nobles, and it's all part of their property and their plan.
Oh.
So actually, the one person I spoke to from Syracuse PD was going to a concert there tonight. I guess they must have some room for some type of a concert. And I forget who she said was going to be there. One of the Beatles' sons or something like that was playing.
Really?
Anyway, so again, I don't think there's anything in the plans for like that, but
No amphitheaters.
All right, so that's Park Point. Software. We're going to get back on the software bandwagon and try and come up with something better than what we have so that getting data is easier. And I guess Ira and I and you will continue to, that'll be the other, we'll call that the dispatch software committee or whatever you want to call it, so we can figure
The idea,
out.
the chief complains that these reports take a long time to develop. And I understand that they do, because I've tried to mine information and it's one heck of a pain in the ass. But that's a software problem. In this day and age, I mean, particularly even before things like Excel or whatever came about, in this day and age, to have a problem mining software is absurd. And I have said before, the chief knows that if this company can't do it, then we may need a company that can. It's a mining program, for crying out loud. It's not like it's a dispatch program or where are you program. It's a mining program. They don't even have to have the dollar signs. You know, that could be a separate program. All they need is a program that will mine their program. They wrote the software. They've got the source code. I'm sorry, but I cannot accept the fact that they cannot come up with a mining program.
Well,
And that's very important.
yeah, well, as an example, you know, the chief and I, we were talking just yesterday, and because, as I said in the agenda, we've got a section here where we're talking about the chief's reports. There's one particular section that he said takes an officer 6 hours to pull data together for something that goes in this report, which is absurd. It is absolutely absurd. You know, anybody on the town board should be able to say, can I get a list of da-da-da-da-da, and somebody should be able to push a button and it should just spit out of a computer in 15 seconds. So we really need to figure out something that works for you. but enables us to get the information and the data we need in a way that is useful for decision-making and comparisons and stuff like that. And I will tell you that Commissioner Follett, just before she left, when I was making an agenda before, she said to me, "What's the status on the software?" So let's do this for her. Did you?
Just to jump the gun a little bit too, I mean, it might be time for us as a commission to sit down and decide what do we really want the chief to give us.
Well,
I figured you're going there too. But
we're going there. That's what the chief's. I'm
all right.
light years ahead of you. Light years ahead of you.
I would like to say one thing, just kind of a little correction, but it's not that
I didn't hear you, Chief.
it's not it's not necessarily a correction, but I just want to say that I don't complain about all this paperwork. I express the fact that it takes many hours for the officers to sit in the office 6 hours doing a report when they could be out walking foot patrol.
Yeah,
Semantics, you don't complain, you just moan and groan.
But again, it's not an efficient use of your limited resources. And if you've got an office full of computers and they can't give you the information that's put into them within 15 minutes, then whatever you're using is not working. And perhaps the commission can come up with something and recommend that the town allocate the money to upgrade
the fact,
this.
Chief, that you can't get a zone report for more than 1 month is ridiculous, because you have such variances during each month that, for somebody to sit down, and that's an important report to know what's going on, particularly if we're going to be changing assessments and how we're doing assessments, which I don't know that's going to happen, but part of consolidation, the Finance Committee came up with recommendations to raise money so that those that use the services pay and those that don't use the services, get the consideration. I mean, like I said, and I've been a big proponent of it, I don't think that the guy who does an eBay mailing list should have to pay an assessment the same as the guy who runs P&G's or Barnaby's or whatever those places are that are open till 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. But the fact that you can't do it, the fact that your software just binds up is absurd.
Yeah.
I mean, we pay a lot of money for that software, and it should be, and these guys don't, for whatever the reason, they're trying to sell a whole new package, and like I said, I'll keep coming back to it. I keep saying before, it's a mining program, and that's all it is. It's a little sub-program that gets attached to your program, that when you want to find it, it doesn't come off your main computer, you go into like an Excel type. I'm just using that as an example. You go into an Excel type, which is a mining program, and you go in and say, go into my main program and pull it. I mean, I've done it.
Is it possible? I don't know where this company is located. Is it possible for them to send a representative to
No, they've
meet
said
with
that.
several of us?
Yes, they have,
Uh-huh.
and I think, because they are upgrading the program again, which they promised really, oh God, 6
Yeah,
years
right, they
ago, I
keep
think.
saying it.
Is that how old the program is?
We've had the program now since 1999, I believe. Is when
Are we
first
talking PD manager or?
PD Manager, yeah. And we're still with PD Manager. They have another upgrade, they've had a few upgrades, but there's been, a few things, the thing that Commissioner Margolis said is how it locks up, especially in the busy, and it's really for the busy areas if we have a lot of calls. So if we do the Main Street corridor, which is V6, it's just the zone that we use for that location. Because of the number of calls in a month period of time, you hit a search engine to print out or give a report, it locks up every time. It will give you, I can do maybe 4 days at a time, 5 days at a time, and then you get a stack of paper also. So we're looking for a different type of way of getting information. And even foot patrols, if you look at the report, the reason why it takes so long is because there's such a breakdown that many years ago the commissioners wanted. They wanted to know every shift comparisons from last year, from last month. Does the commission want that? And that's what we'll talk about a little more. If you just want to know how many foot patrols we've had during the month, I can give you that number easily. That's an easy search through the computer. But if you want to know which shift and all these different things per date, then you got to open up individual cases step by step, and you're doing it manually, and it's time consuming.
Is the hardware optimally configured to run the most current version of that software?
Well, right now they're releasing another version that we've actually haven't decided if what we're doing with software and with if we're staying with this company or not. It's paid for now. All we pay for is maintenance. I don't think there's any increase with the change from what I understand.
But in terms of the hardware, being able to handle the additional functionality, I mean, could that be part of the problem?
I'm not sure if their program gives us what the commissioners were looking for, even with the new program. Am I missing?
Why don't I suggest this? Why don't you and Commissioner Margolis
Want the chief?
be that subcommittee for working with the chief on perhaps coming up with, because I know Ira has
I don't mind doing that at all.
I'm sorry?
No, I don't mind doing that
Yeah,
at all.
Ira has some very, very specific, he's the forensic accountant guy
Yeah.
here, so he likes very specific data, and so I think if the two of you put your heads together with the chief, because there are needs that he has
Yeah.
to maintain as in addition to privacy and so on and so forth. So we just need to be able to get data in and out to him the way that he likes to have it.
Right.
Or if we're asked for it, we can provide it, like Kevin Barry called and said, give me the number, and then it was like, somebody probably was manually going through it, trying to find it.
That was one hell of a job that the chief had to do
Yeah.
to come up with those area reports, which showed which districts are costing us a lot of money.
Yes.
And it's the problem is, like typical of this program, it says, gave me start, gave me middle, but couldn't give me the end. So you're sitting there with, let's say, on one particular business that had 60 calls in 1 month. Just one business, 60 calls in 1 month. We knew how many people we had there. We knew when they got there. We knew what they did, but we didn't know when they left. So if the guy pays, let's say, $5,000 in taxes a year, and we, need to know, well, hey, wait a minute, this is for something in the future. This is for protecting the taxpayers. Again, people should pay their fair share.
Yeah. Minimum system requirements change all the time as the software is upgraded.
And you've had that software since '99?
We had some upgrades.
So after a while, I can tell you
That's
from
20
my own
years old.
business where I rely on reports every
come a long
day
way.
to keep a lot of data moving. Everything's got to be integrated properly. Otherwise, you wind up spending a lot of time on money and trying to make a system work in a way that it's never going to really do.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Bruce.
And they keep trying to do software, I think, to the, I don't know.
And then when there's a problem, software points to hardware, and hardware points the finger at application.
Right.
And you're paying the bill.
But you're
Okay.
also going to want something that's officer-friendly,
Yeah.
that they can manage and use, which PD
Absolutely.
manager.
Well, can I ask
Okay.
Commissioner Margolis, and can you three put together something and then perhaps come back next month and let's really try and move this software thing along and get it done? Or at least
Get
some
it
ideas
started.
to get it started. Or
Get it started,
suggest-
starting to
yeah.
get it done.
Yeah, that would be great. All right. Crossing guard. Amy, you asked for me
Yeah,
to...
I number one, wanted to thank the chief for getting a sign out over by Moxie, in between Moxie and the middle school. Unfortunately, there was an accident. Fortunately, it was not tragic, and a young student was hit by a car several weeks ago. And I really appreciate the chief getting that sign over there to alert motorists to slow down near our middle school. However, this sign that we have there now is only a Band-Aid. And the chief told me that these are temporary signs, what he has there. And I'd really like to understand what, I've been harping on this topic, it seems to me like for 2 or 3 years already, and I have a lot of parents in the community that talk to me about it, and I see people at school, and a lot of people were really upset when that kid got hit by the car. And I'd really like to use this as a wake-up call for the community. I know that the school has a meeting scheduled for April 18th, a school safety meeting.
What meeting, Amy? I'm sorry.
It's a school safety meeting
School safety.
being held, I think, by Maria Rice, and I guess the school board on April 18th. But what I would like to ask is if this commission could ask the town for better signage. Down that road, I see signs for apple orchards, I see signs for wineries, submarine museums. But, you know, we have students, we have a lot of students in a big school on a very busy road. And I really have trouble laying down at night and sleeping knowing that there is no signage and people do not know. I often go to other communities, traveling, and I see just very simple signs. Really, I was on the internet finding these images. These signs are like between $125 and $200, and they ship in one day. So why we don't have these there, I do not know, and I'm sorry that I sound like someone's mother, but I am. And I get very upset that we live in a supposedly walkable community. We don't get buses provided for many junior high school students who live in the village. Yet our school administration takes no responsibility for our students once they leave the building. After this accident, I personally called the middle school to ask what was being done in terms of educating the students, how to cross better, how to not walk diagonally across the street. You know, these kids are 11, 12, 13, 14, half of them live on farms. They don't cross well, and we really have a big problem.
So should we, I don't know if the street signage that you're trying is something that the Department of Transportation, we would have to, that would have
It's
to
the
be
DOT
something, and
that
would
doesn't
be,
let us
Yeah.
put the
would
signs
that
up.
be
Well,
through the village?
I don't know what we have to do, but we need to
Yes.
take some community action. Everybody talks about safety. There's a lot of big issues of our times, but I'll be honest, if we're not protecting our youngest citizens and they cannot get to school safely, then we have a very large problem. I also wanted to mention, we talked about the crossing guard not working there anymore. I know that we're advertising now, or school is advertising, I think the school is advertising, for a new crossing guard. The crossing guard makes $10 an hour. I think that $10 an hour is a fine wage for many, many jobs. However, if you're only working for 1 hour, and then you have to leave, and then you have to come back 7 hours later to work for 1 hour, I think that we should consider possibly offering 15 or 20 for the hour. The person has to drive their car.
Who's paying that?
Just the gas alone, if the person lived in the town, I mean, that's if we found somebody even in the town, would be $5, $6 just to get there and park. So how can we expect somebody to want to take this job? And
Well, let me slow you down for just a
Okay.
second. Slow you down.
and I do have one last point
Okay.
after that.
Okay.
Okay. It's quick.
The school sets that salary. That has nothing to do,
Okay.
the chief and his department has agreed to make sure that the person is adequately trained. They sign in
Yes.
with them. They check over the sick leave and all of that stuff. So the salary
Yes.
and all of
I know.
that stuff
But
is.
we did discuss this at our meeting, so that was a recommendation that several parents had pointed out to me, and I do plan to bring my signs and this information to the safety meeting on April 18th.
Do you know where that is?
I think it's the high school. I did want to, while I'm on this topic, I just want to say one last quick thing, and that is that it does not make sense to me when I'm driving on 32 North past Stewart's going towards Duzine, and about a city block and a half before we hit Duzine, the speed increases. So we go from 30 to 40, 45, a block and a half before all the parents filled with cars, filled with little kids, and all the buses making these giant, weird, wide turns on a busy road. We all have to speed up a block before that school. And I just think it is very poor planning, and I don't understand it. I see it, it's just a block, so my recommendation is, I don't know if we have to write a letter to someone. I really would appreciate everybody on this board's support. So I think it's very, very important.
Well, I sense your frustration and.
It's just common sense stuff.
No,
and that's all it
I
is.
know, but the only thing I wanna tell you is that is not our scope and our purview. Those are Department of Transportation issues, those are school issues, and those have absolutely nothing to do with the New Paltz Police Department, the New Paltz Police Commission, or the chief. You know, we can talk about making sure that if people are speeding in those areas, he can step up his patrols, but we have absolutely nothing to do and carry zero zilch weight with respect to speed limit signs and signs similar to those. I mean, I think, you know, and
I really do appreciate what you're saying, but
I also
honestly,
think that there should be a stopping sign.
every agency in the town, the village, the school, everybody wants to wash their hands of this, and I certainly understand that it's not this commission's responsibility, but I think that we have a very big problem, and I'm just bringing it up to this commission because the crossing guard came up, and all these issues came up, and I did also want to thank the chief tonight. Thank you.
Chief, can I ask you a question, please? How much did that sign cost, that mobile sign that you have?
The mobile sign, I believe, was $12,000 or $14,000.
So if the school board were to allocate money for one or two of those signs, and then not put them on 299, or not put them on the 299 poles, but put them on village or town property, that would serve the purpose and get around this nonsense with having to use this DOT, in my opinion. I could be wrong. So for the school board to come up with, let's say, I'll call it $25,000 for two decent signs to do exactly what you want, and that would alert everybody on both directions or whatever that the school in process, or however we're doing it now, and because they're not using the DOT, I think that might be something for your group to recommend to the school board to go out and buy. And then, even if we had to, I know it's not in our domain, but I'm sure we could find somebody, like they managed to find somebody to put red flags all over the place for the bike ped committee. I'm sure we could find somebody who'll be willing to, put those signs up and take those signs down. But it's just a thought, Ed, because it's, it gets around all of this political nonsense.
I'd also like to just throw in a little bit on those signs. Years back, for years, we've talked about having the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit over by the middle school especially, because it's 30 miles an hour. That's what the village speed limit would be there. DOT has not ever, because they're the ones that have to agree to that. It's not a village decision, and I know the village at one point, as well as the school district, has asked for that. They finally put in the one crosswalk there, but still the DOT hasn't cut out the curb like they're supposed to on the west side of the crossing from the parking lot of the middle school. So again, DOT is the one that has to approve it. Just like down in the village, there used to be really great crossing signs down there to make you alert of the crosswalks. DOT made the village take them down because the colors were school colors and they couldn't be used down in Lower Main Street. So when you want to get around, or you want to have issues that come up that we want to address with signage or whatever, because they're state roadways, DOT has to approve them, and it's not that easy of a deal. I mean, you see where there's accidents and you want a traffic light somewhere, it takes years, after sometimes more than one fatality, before DOT will put a light in. And it's unfortunate, and I don't know, and I agree with you, it's not necessarily our purview, but it might be something that you start the snowball rolling and see who jumps on. The safety bicycle committee, maybe they want to help take a lead.
Transportation Implementation Committee.
Yeah. There used to be a safety committee, a traffic safety committee, that I don't know if they're gone or they just haven't had a meeting in years.
Talking about the town?
Yes.
That hasn't met in years and years.
But
They had it, and then they came up with recommendations, and then it's like all other committees.
Like
It just went,
That's what I was wondering, where
It might
if there
be
was
ad
a
hoc.
town. Yeah.
It might have been an ad hoc committee where.
No, it wasn't. It was an official committee of the town. It's just that the town wasn't, didn't do anything, they didn't bother. They came up with recommendations, and recommendations didn't mean anything, so people got tired of being on that committee. That I know, because I know the people that were
blame them.
involved in the traffic study.
But I think a speed limit reduction when school's in session, I think is
That's
a
what I
great
was
idea.
thinking, yeah.
And not just for middle school, Duzine School, the high school, and Lenape. I mean, there are areas where you have a lot of traffic, whether there are kids walking or whether parents are dropping off kids or buses are coming out, I think that would be something to really try to push for. And I don't know who we would really talk to, but get the ball
The
rolling.
Transportation
Implementation Committee.
Okay. The Audi was sold,
Yes.
picked up,
Yes.
check delivered.
Yes.
$10,050.
Yes.
What was it?
500.
Oh, that was a typo.
10,500.
Typo on
10,500.
their,
So we
their
got
letter to us.
$450 more out of the deal than we were expecting, so that
I
was
also verified that it went into our seized asset account.
did it go in?
Oh, yeah.
Good,
I checked that out.
good. Okay, new business. Rex needs a physical, and there's paperwork sitting there waiting for Rex to get his physical, and a grant would pay for it, and where is that?
I think in an office behind that glass door. We were contacted by Cahill's office that we were eligible for a $5,000 grant for equipment and any expenditures for our canine. For a vest that we've been trying to come up with money to get for him, bulletproof vests, physicals, food, veterinarian care, new leash or runners, whatever they call them for the canines. So at any rate, we applied for it based on that phone call. We were awarded the grant. We're just waiting for, before we can start spending the money, we have to wait to have, the supervisor has to sign off on it. And it's my understanding we just haven't received it back yet. So we're just kind of holding off, but he's due for his physical, and we don't want to spend money if we have it coming back to us. And if we spend it before that's signed, then we do not get the money for it.
So that money is designated specifically for the canine.
Correct.
They can't put it in general funding and use it for, whatever.
We asked,
How long ago was that submitted?
the bookkeeper was asked to add a
A line. That's
for
what I
that
was
funds coming in
checking.
and to go out. So it doesn't come right out of our budget, it's a new line that the funds will be put into. And that was requested a couple weeks ago also, maybe, I'll say 2 weeks, but it might have been a little longer.
Can the cost of housing the dog be taken out of that?
We really haven't had the need for that. To house them.
Well, I'm looking at it in terms of the officer who takes the dog home and gets paid for taking the dog home. I consider that housing. You see, and if housing, the dog can be paid for, then we can reduce some of that expense.
That's already a contractual thing. It's not to replace contractual stuff.
No, I understand he gets paid for it. Well, what I'm saying is like when we move the money from seized assets for certain things for Rex, can we move money from this account to that account and call it housing? I'm just asking. I'd rather see it there than being spent somewhere else.
That is already contractual.
Yes.
So it's not to pay for contractual things.
Oh,
It's
okay,
for
that's
additional- yes, for
the
additional
answer,
things.
not the, okay.
Does the physical
try.
include vaccinations?
Yes.
Are the vaccinations being delayed because of this transaction that still has to take place?
He's due, yes. So it's, I don't know exactly what, because I know he goes to the vet a couple times a year. So I'm not sure if that's what takes place during this physical time. I think it does.
I mean, my only concern would be that, for example, if he has to get a heartworm vaccine and he hasn't, and then he develops heartworm because he's late, that's the end of the dog. So,
Yeah, there's no report from Officer Knoth, who's a canine handler, saying that, hey, we need this done yesterday. But we're
we
just
should
holding
ask.
off. Yeah.
I mean, just to get an idea of what the time frame really is.
Because that's not something you would know really.
Yeah, the form is, it's in the supervisor's office waiting to be signed, so it just needs to be pushed along.
And just a check on that budget line was created. So maybe if you can make that phone call. Thank you.
Donation mobile field unit.
We have a mobile field unit called the MFU. It's an old ambulance that we've had for, I think we've had probably about 7 years now, in that ballpark. We received the ambulance from the rescue squad. We actually did a kind of a trade. They got a couple of our older bicycles, we got their older ambulance. We turned it into, actually when Chief DeGacken from SUNY was a detective sergeant with us, he was kind of the person that really took charge of getting this developed. what it basically is, it's we use it for crime scenes. If we have a major crime scene, it's equipped with boxes, anything we pretty much need if we're going to be at a crime scene for a while and we have a lot of evidence to gather. The town board has asked for us to reduce some of our fleet size. This is something that we really don't use a lot because the detectives carry a ton of evidence supplies in their vehicles. We also now have the command vehicle, which has been a bigger asset for us. When we go to a major crime scene, we park that. It offers heat, cool air, whatever we need if we're going to be somewhere for a while. It also has areas for supplies that we can put some of those
Wait, so this isn't the command vehicle?
No.
This is a secondary?
This is a secondary. This is an old
Okay.
ambulance.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's smaller than that other one that you have the
Yes.
office in and everything?
Correct.
Okay.
The command vehicle we use for if we're going to be at a scene for a
Uh-huh.
while and we can process this. It has computers in it.
Mhm.
The MFU basically is just a unit that has crime tech equipment in it. But we are able to do the same thing with our detective vehicles as well as the command vehicle. This particular vehicle, because it's a diesel, it needs to be plugged in all winter long, and honestly, where it's located, it wasn't practical, so it hasn't been. So it ends up costing us money to get it up and running again at the beginning of the season. So we have it down for donation rather than sale because it was donated to us. So I think it's only proper to see if there's another agency in town that could use it. In doing that, we learned that SUNY, their fire and safety group they have there, have a need for it. So I'm presenting to the commission to present to the town board to say, you know, yes, let's donate it to them, and or if they have to sell it for $1 or whatever they, you know, normal course of the business would be.
I make a motion that we authorize the chair to write to the town board for permission to donate the, what is it, mobile field unit to SUNY New Falls.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair will write the letter.
Could you do it tonight?
See if I can get to it. What's the agency called at SUNY? What is
It
it?
is the fire and safety.
SUNY Fire and Safety.
Is it the safety committee or
Oh, God, I
I
don't
don't
know.
know that.
Okay. Traffic camera discussion.
We had one of those, didn't we?
Yeah, we've had it. It's like a bad meal. It keeps coming back.
The biggest issue is that New York State yet does not have legislation for the use of it. That has not been since our last conversation. And really, that's our main holdup, because without the proper legislation, you know, you can try to get a town to pass law, or the village to pass a law to create the use of it, but it's something that can still be overall challenged statewide. So we've held off really for that reason. I know the discussion has come up more about it. And then there's pros and cons to it. A lot of people don't like the use of the cameras because they say that, you know, it's just a financial gain for the community. It's not a safety issue because you don't have an officer stopping the offense. You just have fines being paid for the violations. There is, you know, you can go back and forth. We've been dealing, and we spoke with a company out of Maryland. The idea is, it's a nice idea, and if your revenue is something that a lot of communities use it for, but it also does deter speeders, because when they know that camera's going to be there, they don't violate that law. I forwarded you an email. I had a woman who sent an email complaining about the traffic cameras at the intersections in Main Street, and how she almost was rear-ended because when the light turned yellow, she hit the brake because she didn't want to get a ticket, and because she didn't want to get caught in the middle of the intersection. And I explained to her that we don't have cameras. They do look like cameras. The DOT put them in. They're sensors to help the cycling of the traffic light. Some intersections have them in the ground. but they, really weather, ice, and everything couldn't interfere with the performance of them. The sensors seem to work better, but they do look like cameras. So I told her they weren't cameras. She was actually relieved. She sent an email indicating her displeasure of the fact that it's revenue and it could cause more problems. But anyway, so there are pros and cons, and I think that if legislation is passed, I think it is something that we should really consider and maybe get community input, and then a decision will be made. And whatever the decision is, I will implement.
Well, the town would have to do that, because they would have to like change laws and whatnot for you, because you're ultimately the enforcer.
Either the town would have to create law, but again, it would have to go along with the legislation, or
The state.
Yes, or if the state passes a law and actually creates a traffic violation for it. Because the big issue is, as of this point, for you to get a traffic ticket, you need to be identified as the operator of a vehicle on a public highway. All as these cars, or these cameras do, is it gets the plate, and you as a registered owner, it might be your son, daughter, a friend borrowed your car, you're gonna get a ticket that's gonna say, now it won't go on your license, but you'll get a fine, and the fines could be anywhere from $40 to whatever the town sets. So in most cases, people just send them in because, it's easier to do that than go and fight a ticket, and prove that it wasn't you driving or whatever, but I don't necessarily agree with that, but, so there's things to consider.
But we're not there yet.
We're not there yet. Now, when we do get there, if we get there, just so you know, the one company we dealt with, there's no cost for the equipment. They get a percentage of the revenue that comes in. So, that's the pros from a town perspective. They download it, and all the information is through satellite, and it gets downloaded to their company, or we get that download and you go through them, because there's a lot of errors and a lot of things that maybe you can't get, and then you hit approve, they're the ones that actually get the fines.
So you get a report, basically.
Correct. Yep. The company mails out the fines and everything else.
The company does that.
Yep,
Wow.
and then sends the revenue to the portion of the revenue to the town.
Do you recall what the split on that was?
It depends what the volume of tickets are. So if, obviously if there's a large number of tickets, they'll take a less percentage. It was either 30-70 or 40-60, depending on, the volume. And like I said, we can revisit it. I think now would be poor timing to do it, because it would be more work for the town to try to come up with passing a law that may not really hold up because of the state.
When do you expect to hear from the state?
I know the state has been talking about it, with starting on this, like the highways, but it has not yet passed.
Okay. Any other comments on the traffic camera? Okay. Motorcycle.
Yeah,
Did you want to keep that, or you want to?
No, I spoke to the chief about motorcycles.
Okay. You just take it off?
Yeah, I don't know where it's going to go with. I mean, obviously, what they're doing does violate the law, but I mean, it's like throwing a piece of paper. It's very complicated, according to the chief, which is why they don't enforce it. I mean, that's what he said.
Yeah, any
Okay.
vehicle, motorcycle, I mean, we have motorcycle written down here, but any vehicle, whether it's a motorcycle, car, truck, if you're not equipped with your stock exhaust equipment, if you get an aftermarket type of exhaust, that's even illegal.
Mm-hmm.
There's headers for cars, and there's the cherry bombs, or whatever they call them. All these, you hear all these little cars, whether they're a Subaru or a Toyota or a sports car, and they have certain exhausts. Technically, they're illegal. Generally speaking, we don't just stop a car because they have one of these type of exhaust systems. If they're creating a greater noise by revving the motor, or making a scene of some sort, then they do get pulled over, and we do write tickets. But just generally speaking, if a motorcycle that has a loud exhaust is just going easy up Main Street, we don't stop them and say this is an aftermarket exhaust.
That's, as I said, it's one of those things that unless they're standing in front of one of the bars or whatever, revving up their engines and carrying on, the guy starts his motor, goes, and, you know, we're not gonna take the guy off patrol to go running after him for a header or whatever.
Is it because it's aftermarket, or the presumption is it's going to be louder than stock?
It's louder than stock.
So you could have an aftermarket exhaust below the decibel limit, and it would be legal.
Correct.
I do have one other question unrelated, but as a motorcyclist, I'm kind of curious. Do we have any issues in towns where motorcycles fail to trip the green lights? Like, I get
Yes,
stuck on the
yeah.
corner by the middle school quite a bit, waiting.
208, I get it.
All right, so I know in some municipalities, if you wait for a reasonable period of time, you make a safe right or pass through the intersection. Police understand that. I'm just curious if we have a,
It doesn't necessarily make it legal. You may get stopped. I've actually stopped a motorcycle before, and the guy told me, yeah, I've been sitting here for 10
Yeah.
minutes, you know, and I have not issued a ticket. Most officers would use the discretion and understand that, as long as you don't pull up and say, okay, I'm here long enough, and you go. But it depends what the officer observes.
Mhm.
But it is a difficult thing that we encounter, and we do understand that. I know sometimes I roll back and try to hit that little
You
pad
know,
in the street.
or they make those things that can trip the light. I don't know if those are legal or not.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't know they made those things.
Oh, yeah, they're pretty popular.
Sounds
Get one of
illegal.
those.
No,
Sounds
I'm not sure they really are. They don't actually change the light. They let the sensor in the ground know, because
That
the
you're
bike
coming.
doesn't have the weight, doesn't have the mass.
Yeah.
They're magnetic sensors.
Mm.
So, and you don't always know where the sensor is. A car is 6, 7 feet wide, you're bound to be up closer to it. With a bike, you may not know, especially if you're making a right-hand turn and you're on the right side of that lane or on the left side of the lane. You could sit there all day or all night unless a vehicle comes up behind you.
I was
And
just
they
gonna
may
say
not
that.
trip it either because
We have
you,
sensors like that?
oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they make a device that lets the sensor know that you're there. It doesn't trip the light, but it trips the sensor.
Ah, gotcha.
At every
There's always
traffic
the,
light? Or like
Some
I
are-
know the
yeah.
Mannheim,
most of them
Main
have it,
Street
some are on
intersection
just a
is a
time
lot.
cycle. Like if you sit
Right.
in a parking lot somewhere, you'll watch the lights change every so often. And they
Right.
are on a cycle.
right,
Um,
and that's why I thought like Mannheim
Yeah.
and.
But a lot of
Main
them, and a
Street
lot of them, it depends on the time of day. Time of day, they'll
Right.
sit there and they
Right.
go through a preset cycle. And then after that, at night, because, you know, you have a side
Right.
street that you don't have a lot of traffic coming on, they'll
Uh-huh.
keep the main one open until somebody pulls up and then it switches.
A lot of times you
Why?
can see where the roadway's been cut for the
Right.
sensor, yeah.
Well, I've seen that by like I can't think of what it's called, but where something will go
Railroad
up to
crossing
let
or-
like a
Go in
like
the
traffic
parking
go
lot,
through.
yeah.
Exactly, like that
Yeah.
kind of thing. But
Patrol on Platic Hill?
Yes. I spoke to, some people spoke to me, and the problem with Platic Hill, and I'm not talking about noise complaints and noisy kids going back, they were, you know, going to college. I mean, you're on a college street, you're gonna get noise. The problem is with the D&D. They come out of the bars, they go up Platic Hill, and they're carrying on. That's different than just, you know, noise complaints. That's a situation that should be tracked by, you know, people that are sitting by the bars. They see somebody come out of those bars, and rightly so, these people. It's more of a hazardous situation than just a noise. You know, they're drunk and they're singing or they're talking loud or whatever. I mean, you're on Platic Hill Avenue. This is what you get because it's the college. But if they're D&D, that's another problem. And apparently, the consensus of the people that are living on that street is that your officers aren't following through with the D&D. Which, you know, again, I don't know, but I'm relaying the, you know, the complaints of the people, because you do have your officers sitting there. You do see these kids coming out of the bars. You do see these groups of them going down, you know, Platic Hill. And it's something that, you know, they would like, you know, your officers, if they see them coming out of the bars and they see them staggering or whatever, you know, that maybe they should act.
Well, I think that they do, but I'll put out another reminder to the night sergeant.
Okay, that's all
We
you
do
can do.
every so often have to do the old, you know, the usual remark of zero tolerance and write everybody,
Mhm.
give them an appearance ticket. You know, we do try to give, and the officers do drive and say, hey, keep it down, you know, and then we go through times where we don't even do that, we just arrest them and say, you know, we come up with the signs that are posted that says, stay quiet, you know, people are sleeping, and I forget what the sign exactly says. It was a sign that I saw down in Mamaroneck.
something about please be mindful of
Mindful of the neighbors, yeah.
something like that.
So I took a picture of one down in Mamaroneck, I brought it up, they made the signs, and actually they posted, I didn't even know they were posted.
Yeah, it's probably, I think it was almost a year ago that they
Yeah.
we put them up. And I remember you had given me a list when I had been on the commission of places that were getting a lot of noise complaints, phone calls, and that was, a lot of those places were added to that list.
So, I mean, you know,
But-
it's a nice thing, it helps, I think, for the people that want to be courteous. Once they get a little extra drinks in them, I think it's a little harder for them to read. But I will remind the sergeant and, you know, to just step up the patrols on that.
You know,
And the
to con-
corridors going back to the college and to the dorms and stuff.
To contribute to that, I have gotten, I've had many photos sent to me of SUNY police pulling people over on Plattekill Avenue. And, you know, it's definitely plausible and I think probable that there are times where, you know, they might be following them off of campus or down the road adjacent to campus, but then by the time they pull them over, they're fully on Plattekill Avenue, not quite adjacent to the college. But so I think that instead of making a stink and saying don't be doing that, we should say, well, you're pulling people over on Plattekill Avenue, why don't you add foot or bike patrol on weekend nights, since a large part of it, I mean, when we think about where the attempted sexual assaults have occurred, it's been that exact same area. So I think that is the highest, I mean, certainly while I've been in New Paltz, that is the highest rates of the attempted sexual assault taking place on Plattekill Avenue. So I think why not? You know, I mean, if it's a road adjacent to the campus and it's legal for them to be pulling people over and getting the revenue from those tickets, they may as well be protecting the students that are walking there for the campus. And I don't know, you know, who should be having this conversation or how reasonable that might sound to, you know, the SUNY police, but I think it's, you know, I don't think they're going to say, well, we don't want to protect those people, you know, but it could be a dialogue.
I think they do foot patrol, they do on Plattekill Avenue at the further end, where it's
Right.
adjacent to the property. Where it comes from Tricor out to Main Street, although they'll stop cars there because
They're
they stop
following
cars
them
coming
down.
through the stop
right.
sign right there on, you know, where they do patrol, they come off their jurisdiction to write those tickets.
Right.
But to patrol out there, they're not supposed to do now at this point. But they are a deterrent because they do come up Main Street to do their loop. And I still think being a visual deterrent is a
Absolutely.
great thing.
Well, I mean, I guess part of what I'm thinking is, you know, maybe they don't have to walk all the way to Main Street, but maybe they could walk down to the corner of like Lookout and back up. You know, I mean, because even that would, I think, be a huge, you know, addition to safety walking on that street, as well as, you know, doubling the numbers of, you know, foot patrol. I mean, as we were just talking about before, we have more limited resources now than in the past in terms of foot patrol, and maybe the coupling of that could help keep noise down on that street, since we know that there are lots of complaints. But we can see.
Anything else on foot patrol? Okay. Commission procedures and protocol discussion. In the interest of time, I'd like to at least try and breeze through this because I know we have an executive session that may need to happen. But are there any issues with the assignments that were made for the committees that you guys are going to be responsible for?
Only what it means.
You get to annually, basically what we do annually is we check to make sure that evidence and weapons for the committee that you're on with Ira, that the evidence that the detectives say is in the lock boxes and things are there and they match, so that
Do we
it's
actually
consistent.
inventory them?
You actually inventory, not everything, but you know,
Spot check.
Kind of
he'll
spot
give you a
check.
list of stuff, and you'll say, you know what, let me see that.
Yeah.
And they should be able to produce it. And then with the weapons, you make sure that the officers who say they have weapon XYZ actually have that weapon XYZ, and if the weapon's in storage, it should be, you know.
Right,
So
and
Ira
what's in
will-
the car has to match, you know.
So we have to coordinate with the chief
Right, you and Ira
Some way
will
to-
figure out a time, and then you coordinate with the chief as to when you can go over to do that. And then Amy and Steve will do the same for personnel. So is that okay with everybody? Okay.
It
Great.
certainly is, Commissioner.
What? Interviews. One of the things that the chief and I had talked about was perhaps trying to find a better way to streamline the interview process without abdicating the commission's participation in the process. And I know we've kind of sort of been the stone in his shoe when it comes to the interviews and the process that we go through. And while I don't want to give up our right to approve and sign off and be okay with people that are being interviewed, I would like, and I agree, that we perhaps could find an easier and faster way to schedule those interviews. And the way that we've been doing it for the past year and a half, I believe, is that he says we want to do interviews, and then we have to either hold a special meeting, and then all 5 of us get together, and then the gentleman and the lady come in, and we interview them. And what had happened in the past, what had happened prior to that, was that 2 commissioners would go to the police station with the chief, interview. I'd like to see if we can't get back to that. However, the approval for the hiring of the officer still needs to come back to the commission, and I want to open that up for conversation so that we can make his life easier without abdicating our responsibility, but finding a happy medium between the two, because I know it's an annoyance.
Well, it makes it difficult, especially if we have 6 people to interview, and we're going to be going through interviews very shortly because we have the 2 openings for full-time plus part-time. So the way we used to do it, we could start interviews at 4:30. 1 or 2 commissioners would come in, along with me, the lieutenant, and maybe a sergeant would do the interviews. About a year and a half ago, we started where they said, well, all of us want to be part of the interview. So then now we do it, we have to meet tonight, and when we go into executive session, 9 o'clock we begin our interviews, or 8 o'clock, or we're doing interviews, and sometimes we're here until real late because they have to be at night during meeting time. So what I'd like to do, and go back to the way we did, you can select, it doesn't have to be the same commissioners every time. It could be, or it could be different ones. No more than 2 though, otherwise 3 would be a meeting. And then once it always went very smooth like that. We didn't really have any issues. And we'd all agree at the meeting, like, these are the people that we'd like to take to the next level, which is their background. That then would come to a meeting, and then the commissioners that were at the interviews, along with myself, like this, we would say, well, we interviewed, 5 different people. John Doe and Jane Doe was interviewed, and we want to hire each of them. They were good candidates. They did this and that. Maybe give a little bit of their background, and then the approval would go through.
And one of the things that the chief had suggested perhaps is one of the things that might be done is that one of the permanent person in the interview process would be the chair, and it would rotate each commissioner, the first set of interviews would be me and Bruce, and then the next one would be me and Amy, and the next one would be me and so on and so forth. So, I'm just throwing it out there. But I do think there needs to be a faster way to do it so that it's not, we don't have to keep calling special meetings and stuff. And I know that, Ira has issues and Steve might have issues, so I want to just throw it out there. And I'm not saying we have to have a solution tonight, but we should at least talk about it, and we can agree to postpone it to the next meeting or two later meetings, but knowing that it's coming up, we should at least discuss it.
Do we have a standard set of interview questions that we use?
Generally, we do. They do
And then
vary
there's me.
sometimes.
And then there's me. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
but
no,
there's some
yeah.
of the standard, but then you have some depending on the individual, you know, what their background is, where they're from, the, you know, varied questions.
Because, I mean, the idea of meeting at the police office instead of dragging everybody through, everybody here, sounds like a good idea to me. I just wonder if maybe it would be a good idea for the commission together to review this set of standard questions, and obviously the interviewer might have their own twist. But if we had a standard group of questions that we'd ask everybody, then everybody would know what was happening at that meeting, and certainly we wouldn't all need to be there.
Maybe a thing that we can do is, and you can gather the questions. If there's a question that you think would be a good question, you know, or a couple, whatever, you know, send them in, and then we can actually talk
Well,
about.
maybe
all of
you
them
could
and
email us
finalize.
each the questions, what you
Questions that we
have,
ask. Okay.
and then we could all, if we have, you know, other questions, or, you know, we want to abridge any of the questions, or have suggestions for any of the questions, that would be an opportunity that we could just kind of input it, and then we could all together come up with a questionnaire that would be suitable to you for all the interviews, or many of the interviews.
Ira, Steve?
I
No.
think we need to look at the process. I don't know that I would favor what we just discussed at this point. I think we have to streamline it. I think you lose something when you start splitting up, even if you rotate it two and then you make recommendations. I think you lose the input of all five at once. Although I do think we need to look at standard questions, we do need to speed the process up, but I don't think splitting is the answer.
Our interviews
The
recorded.
process used to be one, maybe two people, whatever. During that process, and having it done that way, you wound up with rubber stamps.
Right.
Somebody wanted to
That would be
harry,
afraid of
and you spoke to the commissioner was friends with, and whap, he got it through. As I said when we started these whole procedures, you want me to vote on somebody who's going to wind up making a lot of money, getting a lot of taxpayers, be out on the street, and you want me to okay it. If I'm going to okay it, I have a responsibility to everybody that we represent to know what I'm talking about. Now, I'm not saying they're bad, but I have to look to the future. I saw what happened years ago at the commission. It was, you know, whatever was wanted, that's what you got. Not necessarily the best.
No.
When we changed the program, I mean, fortunately, we have, like, the thing with Randall, and Randall has gone through, and we have gone through a number of things. No, we don't want a rubber stamp. Now, I'm not saying we're going to have that because, you know, because of Randall, but I don't know what's going to be in the future.
Well,
Wait a
one of the
second,
things
we're
that
gonna
I'm
go-
thinking about, and that's a very valid criticism. But my thinking would be that we could do those interviews with two of us and three of us, call them down to whom we thought might be the best ones, and then perhaps
And you're
those
leaving-
were the ones that would be presented to the full commission.
Well, the next
As it-
vote, they can come in and.
Right, it would, and then if you all had questions or whatever, you could,
How about if we recorded the interview, made it available for the commissioners to look at, and if they
I would
want
not
to...
favor
No?
that at all.
I'm just curious why.
I don't think people need to be recorded when they're being interviewed. I would have problems with that.
Look, I know it's an inconvenient procedure, but it's better than having rubber stamps. It's better than having, well, Gene, you can laugh, but...
Well, you know why I laugh?
Because
Well,
you had it. You had it for many years.
Randall
No, I
may
did
like
not.
somebody.
Not,
I did
excuse
not.
me, I take that back. You didn't have it. The police department had it, because you remember, I've been watching the commission for 15 years, and I saw everything that went on. And one of the reasons that we got into this, you're asking me to approve somebody that's going to be out on that street. I want at least the opportunity to talk to them and ask questions. Randall, when we started doing this procedure, Randall asked a whole bunch of questions that things came out. As opposed to somebody who goes into the... I'm not saying this is what can happen, but again, I don't want to see this happen down in the future. It may be inconvenient, you know, possibly if I think about it, I could go along with, you know, letting them call. But you have the same problem when you call. Depends upon who it is. Randall is a chair, I know it's not going to get called. Okay? I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I don't know what's going to happen next year. I don't know who you know, where we're going to be. And you don't want people called who shouldn't be called. I mean, you're asking me to vote on something very, very important, And I think if you want that vote, I should be entitled to at least talk to the people.
What
This
I'd
is
like
my
you to
opinion.
do also.
I'm sorry, Chief, I didn't
What
hear
I'd
you.
like you to do also, and I know there's some new commissioners here, I think it's very important to look at your job description of what the commission's, your duties and responsibilities are. If you look at that, interviewing for, other than the lieutenant's position, the chief's position, and for promotions, it's not really in your purview.
No,
Now,
but the
let me-
attorney,
let me-
excuse me,
please let me
Chief, the
finish.
attorney said it's not within our purview.
No, what
but
he
if you're
said is
asking us
that-
to vote- If you're asking us to vote, he says we are entitled to do the interview.
No,
That's
he did
his
not.
deci- yes,
No,
you-
he said the hiring does lie onto the board,
Do you have
so
that?
I cannot hire. He says it does have to go to the board. What Commissioner Leverett's saying is that the individuals will come here in front of you, or the recommendation from the committee or from the interview committee will come in front of you to vote on it. So you are doing the hire part. He didn't say you have the right to do the interview. If you look at your job description, it says that's up to me. You're not supposed to conflict with my duties and responsibilities, which is to interview. Our policy is to interview for hire. So what happened was, years back when I first took over as chief, I brought in a commissioner to say, you know what, I think a commissioner should be part of this interview process. It went from that to just recently last year where you said, you know what, I think we'd like to be part of it. I said, you know what, I don't have a problem with it, let's give it a try, let's do it. The problem that we're seeing is that we have to do interviews 8 o'clock at night, and that is impractical. So now what we're trying to say is let's have 2 commissioners come on, like our rules and regulations, like the description of the chief of police is for the county. We set up the interview panel, and we conduct interviews. And then again, we bring it here in front of the commission before the actual hire is done. If you want to ask a couple questions of the people that we're presenting, you can ask the questions. And that's when the decision will be made. But I don't think that it should continue to be a 7 o'clock meeting where we're going into interviews and we're here till 10 o'clock doing interviews.
So do you want to do an interview,
Well, that's why we had
proposing-
special meetings.
Well, I just wanna, you know, because I know this is a thorny thing. I got the paper here, and I'm just gonna say that I disagree with your interpretation based on what I am sitting here and looking at, and I will read to you that is highlighted here, and it says, in consultation with Mr. Wallens and given the provision of Town Law Section 150, it is our opinion that in this context, the word shall should not be read to so narrowly as to suggest that the commission is required to simply approve recommendations made by the chief. Rather, it should be read consistent with the provisions of Town Law Section 150 to mean that the commission would solicit applications for and conduct all interviews for the position of chief and other commissioned officers, and for consultation with and obtaining the chief's recommendations, either approve or disapprove such recommendations. It goes on to say, in considering the issues of new hires, this office has considered relevant provisions of the collective bargaining agreement entered into the town, between the town and New Paltz Police Association, which provides in its pertinent parts that all management rights are reserved to the commission, including but not limited to the right to schedule work, hire, and terminate employment subject to civil service regulations.
Hire,
Hire. So,
not interview. If you look at the interview and what it says about interview.
but how would we hire somebody
Yeah, without
without
interviewing, it's not
interviewing
possible.
them?
That was his interpretation. How do you hire somebody
By the
without
recommendation of the chief. But shall, we used to say shall means if I recommend somebody to you, that you shall appoint. Now he says shall doesn't mean that. You may have a different view of it. And again, I'm not trying to take the commission out of it, but I don't think it's necessary because if you look at our rules and regulations of the department, and my job description as chief of police, that is my duty to set up, and it says for me, to set up a panel for interviews. And job description of the commission, or the duties and responsibilities, says your job should not conflict with the duties and responsibilities of the chief.
But
So you hire, I don't hire. I used to hire.
Okay, but here's the sticky wicket. You can go on about your business and conduct those interviews, but if you want me or the 5 of us to make a decision on hiring, I'm not going to do it because you walk in here and say, my recommendation is Joe. I want to see that A, Joe Blow exists, B, that, you know, he seems qualified or she seems, I mean, there's a process of, you know, and I know this is the sticky part. And so what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to find an accommodation so that we maintain the authority that has been given to us, but there is some latitude for you to do what needs to get done without us hampering your process in order to slow down what you need to get done. Does that make sense? Did that come out right?
Do you think 2 commissioners being present for interviews is sufficient
How
to
many,
come
how many
to?
times do you normally interview a candidate?
Well, it depends
The
on
same
what's going on. We've
same-
had a lot of turnover this
Last
time.
year
No,
was
no,
a
but
bad
like if
year.
you,
Yeah,
if
last
you're,
year.
if you give an interview to somebody and you think they could be pretty good, then they come back again for another interview?
No, then they
generally?
start the process with the background where they have to now pass their background. Police officers go through a very thorough background. They go through a polygraph and also a psychological test. They meet with a doctor. They go through a doctor. When that's all done, I then come to you and say they've completed their background, there's nothing found, so we continue their, you know, they complete their hire.
And then,
That's when they're
so then
actually
there's
hired.
not an actual, another interview after that?
No,
That's
no.
it?
The interview is the first process to get them through. If there's anything found in their background, I come to the commission and say, the person didn't get through this, or a person refused to do the polygraph, whatever, so we just continued their background, or sometimes they find another job somewhere in the process, because there is, we do more than a lot of agencies do. A lot of departments will, you know, hire somebody more quickly. We used to do it much more quickly. We would hire right after the interview and then do everything else. So now we do our steps, our stages. And, you know, so the interview process is the first part. We don't start the background unless,
Are you generally, I mean, when you interview with the commission, do you ever use any of your lieutenants or anybody to
yes.
help you with the interview process?
It was myself, a lieutenant, and we even had a couple sergeants would sit in on the interviews. Like I said, that's how we used to do interviews. I started bringing in a commissioner, and then sometimes we had 2, and that's how we did it for, you know, 3 years or so. Last year when, I won't get into all that, but we had somebody on the commission that wanted to challenge everything and have more authority and things that came up, that everything started getting challenged. One of the things came up at the interview, we didn't really agree, but I said, you know what, I don't have a problem with it, whether we agree or not, let's just do it.
So when you propose that we move the interview process to the police department, are you thinking that you'll have more of your officers involved in the interview process instead of having it over here in this building where your officers are not present?
Well, we would have a lieutenant present. Sometimes we'd bring a sergeant in, but, and again, the panel gets so big too. So it used to be a sergeant, the lieutenant, myself, and then 1 or 2 commissioners, so we had 4 to 5 people on it. Before the commissioners were coming in, there'd be at least 3 of us, and sometimes we'd have more sergeants depending on their availability. Because we also, with the sergeants, they weren't getting paid overtime to come in. They were going to be part of the interview process. And it was kind of up to them, and most of them wanted to be part of it. Some of them wanted to be paid, otherwise they didn't want to come in, you know, that type of thing.
Would you consider some type of a screening process where perhaps you first screen them with the commissioners and then the one before they did the background check or after they did the background check to actually bring the person before the commission, before the person gets hired?
That's what we do now. We currently,
So we first interview them, he first interviews them with 2
he solicits the applications on behalf of the commission, and he does a preliminary thing to see if
So you do a
they're
preliminary
all right.
interview
I
right
mean,
now?
Just like,
What we do now is that we have a stack of resumes. We go through the resumes, we look at who they are, what their backgrounds are as far as experience. Most of what we're fortunate with now is that there's a civilian academy, a Phase 1 academy, where civilians go through. And then, so it's less expensive for us when we do hire someone, then we just need to put them through Phase 2, which is 3 weeks. Because now with unions, you have to pay the officer, you can't just sponsor, you have to actually hire.
So everybody goes through 3 weeks after they get hired?
Well, it all depends. There's a 12-week training period that we have. 3 weeks is for Phase 2 of the academy. The academy, the other academy before that is another 10 weeks, 10 to 12 weeks before that they go through on their own, that they pay for.
But what happens if it's not somebody new, like that's somebody that's already been in an academy that's been working for another police department? Then they don't have to go through the
No,
academy
they don't have to go
again.
through the academy, no. But what I'm saying is that the good thing that we have with this phase one, most of our applicants, that's where they're coming from. They're new people looking for jobs. So we have the ability to speak, because a lot of our officers are instructors up at the academy. So we have the ability to know a little bit about them. We go through, we call the academy and speak to the director up there, and we get some input feedback. And then we look at the applications, and we kind of, because we can't interview everybody, we have like 30 applications. And we kind of go through them, you know, and based on experience from doing it over the years, you know, what you're looking for in a candidate. And then we select, you know, if we want to hire 4, we're going to interview probably 10 to 12. And then we, you know, narrow it down. After the interviews are done, and sometimes right after somebody leaves, we'll look at each other and give a couple of feedbacks. Hey, we really were impressed with this or that. But at the end of the night, we sit there, we go through it, we talk about it. And even when it was just 2 commissioners or whatever, it was never, I want to hire this person, no, I want this person. The only time we do that really is when it's a sergeant and everybody has their own feedback. But but it's been pretty, we haven't really ever ran into a conflict that, oh my God, you hired this person, I don't want them hired. So that's why to sit here and say that everybody can make a mistake. Steve Frame used to work for us as an officer.
No, I was one of the
That's
best
not the
hires.
mistake.
I didn't even go to the commission. That's a separate story. I was thinking of something else.
Go ahead. Did you have, you wanted, you were,
No, what I'm saying is I think there is an initial screening that the chief does, and I don't want to make it cumbersome. I think you lose something by not having 5 people ask the questions at once. I may ask different questions from a different perspective. You certainly ask different questions, and I don't mean that disrespectfully. And I just think if you do start to call, I think you lose something in the interview process. Or I'm using those terms, interview, use the terms you want. I think not having us all sit down at once would take away from the process. I myself am very flexible for hours, but I don't know anybody else's schedule.
well,
I don't work overnight stuff, it's dark.
well, I would,
He's flexible like that.
you know, but why don't I suggest this? Why don't we
To talk about it.
go away and each of us think about it individually, and perhaps this can be something we'll put on the agenda again where there's more time, because I think this is one of those things that won't be easily worked out. So is that okay with everybody? We'll like table this until,
Well, don't you have some people that you need to interview? Like, don't you need to know?
Yeah, we're actually, we need to do
Sorry.
interviews on part-timers like
well,
yesterday.
I guess at this point, the process remains the same until, until, you know, I mean, maybe we can do it during the day.
If you guys want to stay to midnight.
No, I mean,
Come in late.
no, what I'm saying is, I mean, I don't know, I mean, I know that I'm available during the days, Ira's available during the day, Steve's available during the day. We may have, I mean, are you available? I
Well, it
mean,
depends on the day. I mean, I could let you know any Wednesday or Friday I'm available with advance notice.
yeah,
So if that
And then,
helps,
you
that's
know,
Yeah, me too. I mean, if I know
Yeah,
we can
yeah, that's what I'm saying. I
advance.
mean, so, I mean, at this point, you pretty much have a commission that
Doesn't have a
does
job.
flex time, you know, or, you know, who, you know, can be available so that it's not something where we come and do the meeting and then go into executive session and stay here for 25 candidates till midnight.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that might,
Well, I'll give you some dates maybe even next week, because like I said, we're down to, another officer's just going back into the military, a part-timer, so he's off, and I have another one that may be retiring. So we're gonna be down to 7 officers.
And just to clarify, I don't think we do
Part-timers.
now, and I don't think we need to see 25 resumes. I think we need to see the people that the chief
calls,
wants us to see.
right, right.
Yes, no, that's.
Yeah, I don't necessarily want to go through 25 lists.
Well, he's the one that has to work with these officers, and he knows what he's looking for, so I would say if he could bring us the contestants, it would help
Yeah,
save
I
a lot
mean,
of time.
I don't, you know, I mean, that's what we do now, I believe.
That's what I'm saying, I think it is.
I mean, that,
So I'll set
We
it
don't
up
see
for
every
that.
name that's available.
Yeah.
Look, the chief's recommendation should carry a lot of weight with the commission, despite anything else. The culling, although I don't like it, I could probably go along with, because you have to give more consideration to the chief's opinion than just, you know, like mine, you know, I mean, the guy comes in off the street, this is not, you know, law enforcement is not my field. In my field, you know, I knew what to do, I knew how to ask, and, you know, here I depend upon Randall. And I'll be very honest with you, because most of the questioning was always done by Randall, and very good, and that's how we came up with intelligent decisions. Now, again, I don't like the culling process, but basically, you know, it's something that I could probably go along with, seeing how it comes out.
I think the only culling we're talking about is from the chief. at this
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, he
That's-
finds it, he
Which
says,
we're
oh,
doing.
I need an officer, and then he
Right.
gets 60 resumes.
Right, we don't need to
And he
see-
looks through 60 resumes and pulls out 4.
Yeah, no,
And then says these are
right,
the ones
that
I
I have no
interview.
problem with,
That's
and in my own mind, if it's a matter of within the department promotions, and, you know, it's Harry and Sam, and the chief decides to call out Harry or whatever, he's gonna have to live with that. I mean, you know, it's the kind of thing that Harry's gonna come to us and say, hey, wait a minute, I got culled for no reason. At least that's what I would hope would happen. So, I mean, right now, I mean, I haven't thought about it through my head, but right now I could probably accept a culling process and go through hiring who we have to hire.
Well, let's, for
And as long as we
now,
do it not in football season, the chief should have no problem.
let's, we'll keep it the same for now, and everybody, we can think about it, and then for the interviews that you have coming up, we will have a special meeting in,
Maybe next week or so. I'll
yeah,
come up with the dates.
come up with the dates or something, and maybe the thing that we need to think about is that we, you know, we schedule, even though we may not have it, an interview meeting. So we go from one meeting to 2 meetings, and perhaps the interview meeting is held at the police department, and you know in advance that this is the day that you got 5 commissioners who come in to do an interview at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and you're set.
Bang it out.
So we go from a regular meeting, and then we have an interview meeting should it be needed. And so that might be a way to work it so that it's a standard day and we're able to get everybody unless there's an emergency.
Can we hold a regular meeting early like that, though? I thought, didn't you say it had to be a 6 o'clock or a 6:30 meeting?
A regular meeting by town law can't be before 7 o'clock or 6:30, whatever it is. Special meetings could be at any time, because if you look.
Interview meeting. This
Right,
would
we
be an
have,
interview
because
meeting.
basically, we have a scheduled meeting, which is the second Thursday of every month. Everything else is a special meeting. Now, we can have a special meeting anytime we want, as long as we notice it as a special meeting. So if you're gonna have an interview meeting, we would notice, let's say that we had, the police commissioner is holding a special meeting at 9 o'clock in the morning at the police department, blah, you know, blah, 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 and that's all we notice.
And how far in advance would we plan it?
It's gotta be 3 days.
3 days. And then the thing too is we go right
Except
into
that-
executive session.
Except for emergency meetings, in which case there's another provision
Yeah.
that allows us to not even notice it.
But we go into executive session anyway for meetings, so I mean, nobody's gonna really, I mean, they could, but
They could show up just for the Pledge of Allegiance
For the
if
Pledge
they
of
wanted,
Allegiance,
until we
and
went
then-
into executive session.
they would be asked to leave or whatever, so, I mean, nobody really shows up. So for now, we'll keep stuff the same and then come up with some
And if it was a
dates.
special meeting, I just have one question. If it was a special meeting, would we be doing minutes and all those types of things at the special
Yes.
meeting?
Yes.
The minutes are kept by whoever's there.
Uh-huh.
It's like an executive session. What happens is the chair, we got the responsibility, so now it's Randall's responsibility to
Or
keep.
I could invite Becky. in.
You can invite Becky, that's perfectly
Becky
legal.
could, yes.
You can invite anybody you want, but, you know, it's usually the minutes are kept by whoever's in the executive session meetings, and just, we come out, if any action is taken, that's got to be done publicly, and that becomes part of the minutes. Executive session doesn't. Executive session is just notes that you keep yourself.
Okay. So right now, it stays the same. Discipline. The chief and I had the conversation about how discipline matters were brought before the commission, and the way that it has been done at least while I've been here, is that he notifies us that there is a discipline problem with a particular officer or officers, and he gives us a recommendation for what punishment or penalty or loss of day or whatever. And we basically operated on the honor system, and there's not been any problem with that. But as we've had a number of discipline issues this past year, and I thought it might be best that, as a way to protect the chief and the department, the commission, and the town, that those recommendations and, I guess, what do you call them, accusations? Or, I mean, how would you phrase what, you know, I mean, somebody doesn't, I mean.
Alleged misconduct.
Yeah. The alleged misconduct, I mean, you give a narrative for the alleged misconduct with your recommendation for action, and then a place for the commission to either approve, deny, and then we keep a file of our actions for disciplinary actions, because we don't have any way to protect ourselves or the town. And if somebody wanted, you know, as I was explaining to the chief, you know, suppose a situation comes up that has happened 3 years ago, and we want to make sure that we're consistent in how we mete out punishment. We should have a piece of paper to go back to and say, well, you know, back in 2007, we did this, and it was very, very similar. We shouldn't be more punitive on this person than we were on the other. So, I mean, I'm looking more for a formal written document from the chief when he makes disciplinary, or, you know, when their officers brought up on conduct charges.
But he does write them up.
But we don't get that.
One of the problems is, and we've discussed this, and we're thinking of not necessarily, because under the contract, we can't have a separate file on an officer. He has a personnel jacket. We have an IA jacket, which is for the discipline. The discipline that takes place, if he gets a letter of reprimand, it's specific in the contract, 18 months, that comes out of the contract, out of his file. If you have a separate file for it somewhere else, you can't do that, and I think that would be an issue. I think more so what we're looking at is, rather than me verbally coming to you saying that this is, you know, based on this officer, we'll just say didn't wear his hat, and say I take a vacation day from him or something of that nature, and, you know, rather than me just coming here, because now the way we do it, we'd sit in a room and say, okay, that disciplinary action, it's written on the cover page, you know, how many disciplinary actions there was, and I'd write 1 resolved or 1 pending, you know, and I update you on the circumstance. And I would say the matter's been resolved. I issued, you know, found that the officer was wrong at this, and I'm taking 1 vacation day from him, and then you have it. The way it really comes to the commission has been if it's more than what I can do. The contract allows for me, under command discipline, to take up to 3 days from an officer, whether it's vacation days and or suspension. They can get a letter of reprimand. They can be ACD, which is, you know, they don't get in any trouble for 90 days and they can be dismissed, just like how court works. But if it's something where an officer does something, and this is what we've had a few incidents where an officer did something that was greater than what I feel that should be done, that I can't just resolve myself, and I bring it to the commission. And it could be a severe accusation. The commission then will make, you know, I may make a recommendation that, you know, I think this officer should have a week suspension or vacation loss. The commission can, by the contract, either agree with me, disagree with me by this officer should not get anything, or this officer should be fired. You know, ultimately, that's in the commission's hand. But if it's more than what I can do, I bring it to the commission to make that final decision. Even after that, if the commission says, you're right, we want him fired, or I want him fired, that officer still has the right to a hearing before they're fired, because there's another level. It's an arbitrary decision will be given. And they may get fired through that, or the problem is, it's such a long process. It could be on the agenda, and we've experienced this, and it could be a year down the road where, you have this person on administrative leave because you don't want the person working in the street. So you're paying them their full salary and stuff pending. Usually that's why it's better that they agree to resign or retire, whatever the circumstances are. And again, we've experienced a few of these things. Now, it's something that comes to the commission, I guess, and that's what we talked about, whether you can still have a file on it, or if it goes into their original IA file, that does stay on file forever, but it's not a separate off-site file. So.
Well, and I think the other thing that we talked about too was the paper. You could tell us, the officer, verbally, who that person was.
Right.
But the document itself would be, Officer X was accused of da 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 da. My recommendation is blah. And then the spot for the commission is approve, deny, or,
If there's three pieces to this, a written document, keeping track of what we did, and consistency, I think that's the way to go. Because I think consistency is the big question that can come up and does come up. What did you do to this officer, and why did you do it differently this time?
right.
To being fair-handed.
Yeah. I don't think we're changing. I think what I want to do is I want to just change the way the chief presents that information to us, so that we keep it here in a locked file that only the chair has the key to, so that if we need to make a decision, we can go to that file and say, oh, 2 years ago we had something like this, and this is what we did. It will guide, because we're not all going to be here, I don't think, 5 years from now. Some of us might, but, so it memorializes actions taken by the commission, and it gives future commissioners an ability to go back to something and have something as a guide, so that they don't necessarily have to make it up again and again and again. So, I don't know, does that sound workable to everybody?
It does to me.
There's just some things, and
I don't know if you
put
can-
on your other hat for a second, if you don't mind, because you also can't use something against somebody.
Correct.
After a certain amount of time, and so you can't go back and say, well, we did this to him just, 2 years ago, and now he's doing this, so let's, there's time allowance, through the contract and civil service law. So that's why they, there's certain timelines for how long you keep documents.
But it's no name.
Right,
There's no
but
name
if you're
there.
referencing back to it, because you still have, a reference to who it was, it's just you have to be careful, and it might be something that you may want to just ask Wallens, can we keep an off, he's the labor attorney, Wallens, that can we keep an off-site? I'm not opposed to it, I just don't want to, jam the town up or the commission either with.
But it's not a file.
No, it would seem to me that what we're saying, or what Randall's saying, is we will have a file that says, somebody yelled at blah, blah, blah. Somebody yelled at, the offense was yelling at a driver.
It's no name.
No name.
Yeah. it's
So
just
if
a
somebody
bunch of
else
paper
comes,
in
the
a
chief
file.
comes to
Full
somebody
file.
else that Harry, well, he tells us, yelled at a driver, we can go back to the file and say, yelled at driver, or what similar situation do we have, and what was our action? It has no name. It's just an action, and that, I don't think that's, if we can check with Wallens, but I don't see that as a problem, because all it just says is that there was an action, and so somebody did this, and the commission found that the punishment, the appropriate punishment was Y. And that's all it says, so that we know anytime somebody does something, the appropriate punishment should be Y.
But you can't do that either,
You
because
can't, it depends on if the
Well,
officer.
yeah.
it's not equal. You don't punish equally, you punish fairly.
Fairly, yes.
And it's based on many things that are, about that officer. If the officer has been spoken to many times, for, different things, and now he's yelling at somebody, you may take a day from him. Another officer that's an ideal officer, always getting accommodations, never doing anything wrong, never always on time. Now he does it. You can't say, well, the last person got this. So fairly you have to be.
Okay,
Well, at the same time, but at the same time, you could that piece of paper from a prior action is not necessarily the punishment that we're going to mete out. We're questioning you about the punishment that you want to take on this particular person, and it may lead to the question, well, why did you do this? You know, we have a situation where it looks similar here, but you're only doing this, and then your answer might be, this person has 5 bazillion accommodations. He's worked for me for 60 years, and this is the first time I've ever had to talk to them. That's why I'm not recommending that they lose 5 days, but, you know, he loses a day, or...
I think, again, I don't think in any way you should violate the contract, and you're right, certain things should come out, whatever the contract says. When I say consistency, I mean, it would be good to go back and have some kind of history. And then, yeah, if Officer A has always done things wonderful and does something wrong, you do treat him differently. But to have some kind of record of what we've done in the past would probably back up what is.
Yeah, I think it's a protection for the commission, because, I mean, I think about all the things that we deal with, and at the end of the day, I look back and it's like, we're the only ones who are perhaps flying, you know, the police officer has the union, and they'll make sure that they're protected. And, you know, we have the labor attorney and stuff, and, you know, so that makes sure that the town is protected. But there's never anything written that says, this is why we did what we did, and that it was in fact brought to us, and this is the action that we took, and it is signed and it is dated, and it has the chief's signature on it with his words stating, this is why this is being brought before you. And so that's all I think is important. So I think I would like that to be the policy going forward, provided it's not violating any, you know, contracts or laws. So I guess I would
I can make a
entertain a
motion
motion.
that you check with, that the chair check with the labor attorney whether the policy going forward is within the confines of what the contract says, you know, the way it's been explained, and, you know, let's wait until see what the attorney has to say.
Okay. Is there a second?
Steve?
I think so. Yes, there's a second.
Okay. All in favor, and again, instructing the chair to check with the labor attorney to see that any opposed? No. Huh?
What else can we assign the chair?
I was going to turn around and give it to you. Documentation and record archival. Once again, it's, you know, we go here. If sometimes I need stuff and I don't know where it is, and I said, do you have, what, you know, and Ira, Mr. Paper, keeps everything. So I was actually talking to Becky today, and one of the things that I want to do, and perhaps I'll sit down with you, Ira, because you are the longest serving member on the commission, perhaps we can sit down with Becky and go through here and archive those things that need to be archived under the state law and give them to the clerk to store, because she said they will store it so that we have the appropriate storage space in here, and remove some of the stuff. But you know more about some of the stuff that's in there than I do, because you've been around longer and been following the commission for 15 years. And I think Becky has graciously agreed to help us with that. And she also mentioned that you had mentioned that you wanted to do that with her last year. So,
but she's been busy. And,
okay, so we're going to figure out a time to do that, and the three of us will, in fact, go through these files, organize them, and try and leave something that has some kind of order behind once all is said and done.
We ought to see if we can sell all the supplies to the town.
That's a good idea.
We might as well make some money.
Okay. Let me jump to the complaint forms and edit. I don't know who handles those, but the complaint forms need to be updated to have all of the current commission.
That's the form that citizens can fill out.
The citizen complaint form.
We have updated them in the past.
You've updated them? Because when I was at the station last week, there's Matt still on there, and Justin's
Randall,
doing.
I spoke to Carol about that because I've been complaining that we don't have complaint forms in town hall.
Right.
We got them all over the place, and why are they not in town hall? I mean, we put them out there, and let's say we put 10 of them out there, and the 10 are gone. We didn't get the 10 complaints, so I don't know where they're going.
Compliments. It's complaints,
Complaint.
compliments,
Well, we
suggestions.
changed them. And she called Teresa at the chief's office to get the template that they have up on the website. So once she gets the template, she can make those changes to the form, because
Right.
unfortunately they're in PDF form.
Right, but they're downloadable off the town.
Right now, the only difference, the only problem with the forms is it doesn't have the right names on them. And that's, you know, it's like I have stationery for the police commission, because I kept when I have it. My stationery is, you know, manipulable. I can change it if I ever had to use it. Randall has the same thing. He can just change the names. But the form that we have is on the town police website. It's in PDF. Teresa was supposed to be looking on how to change that. She was going to send that information to Carol so that Carol can make the changes.
Very simple.
And then we just have to print one out and run off the copies.
It's just,
And
it's
if
word,
the
it's-
file could be sent to the village, because I'm pretty sure we have them.
You've got, the village has got,
Available.
the village has got, the only
In
thing is,
hard
it's got.
copy.
You should have it downloadable from your new website, too.
I'm pretty sure I shouldn't say that. I have no idea whether they're on there or not. But I know that they're available in hard copy. So
They're available in hard copy, and that's
but
the way
either
we used to do it
should
in
be
the town.
both. And if whatever is sent to the village clerk, she'll put it on the website as well as printed copies.
Yeah, as I said, it's, you know.
the
it's just
letterhead of
name.
that is the commission, the New Paltz Police Commission letterhead. That's on there with the names. And that, have you had your letterhead changed also already, or not yet?
What letterhead? I didn't know we had letterhead.
Yeah, we have letterhead.
That
How do you write
complaint
letters
form
without
is-
I
letterhead?
haven't written a letter.
You write
I haven't
letters.
done that yet.
I will send you the,
We have some old stationery with
Oh.
Alexander Hamilton.
So you need that
Randall,
letterhead.
I'll send you the copy of the stationery that's in Microsoft Word form. So
Okay.
you can make whatever changes you want on it. It took me a while to get that. What I had to do was take the PDF file.
See,
and
I
do some
told
kind
you you
of
had everything.
play some kind of games with the PDF file, tell it was something else, then make the
Becky.
changes in the other format.
You updated that? Very nice.
And while we're on the
Do you have access to the
topic
complaint form or no?
of the, while we're on the topic of the complaint form,
Yeah.
I just wanted to mention that there are many citizens that are not aware that there is a complaint form, and I think that it would be a great thing if we could have some kind of a PDF again on our public access, or hung in Town and Village Hall in a place where citizens can see it when they attend meetings or pass through, or pay parking tickets or whatever, wherever we can post them, so that people know about them, because there are definitely incidents and people that get upset and they don't really know where to turn without getting really frustrated. And if they just knew that they could fill that out and their voice would be heard, I think they'd feel really good about that.
Yeah, when the comment forms, let's call them comment, because I can't remember the name for them anymore, first came out, they were placed all over. They were placed in the village hall, they were placed in the town hall, they were placed in the library. We did announcements from the commission that they were available. They're available in the police department. And we had the whole change. It used to be that you only could get it at the police department. So they are available all over the place, and people walk in. I just happened to notice that these are missed, we didn't have anything here, which is what started the whole change. Because I don't know where they're going. But we've always, I agree with you, we've always told people, you know, particularly when people say they have a complaint, you know, I always tell them, fill out the form. Because without the form, there's nothing concrete. But we have them all over the place. The only place we can't put them is the college.
Okay, well, we just need to make sure that they're
Updated.
edited and updated. The chief's report, and I don't want to go into that other than the fact that it generates a lot of paper and it takes a lot of time. And in the interest of time here, it is 10 o'clock. And, you know, I apologize, but this was in fact our first housekeeping organizational meeting, so they're not going to be jam-packed going forward if I can help it, and I'm going to help it. If you could perhaps think about an alternative to what you provide us with the proviso that Ira continue to get whatever it is that he wants from you as it relates to crunching numbers for the data that you generate out of this monthly report. So perhaps you will do 4 mini reports and Ira can get the ticker tape parade version or something, or at least be able to get access to this information at will. But I know it's a pain to try and...
Well, if we're generating the reports for Ira, just making an extra copy.
Well, he doesn't want, I mean, you don't want everything, do you?
Well, there are some things that I don't want that the town and village want. I mean, I
Well,
could care less.
well, let me ask you this, then, well, if the town and the village want, then let the town and the village ask him for it. I don't know why.
They did, that's why he generates the report.
Yeah, but do they still ask you for it?
Well, for example, the streetlight report.
That's, yeah.
That's something that's emailed, that we forward through an email to Central Hudson as well as the town and the village. That's
So
all
we don't
email.
need that.
So I print it out so I can make copies for everybody here. So that could be one that I don't have
Yeah,
to print.
the reason it got so massive was the fact that the commission, the older commissions, always felt that if any document was going to be sent to somebody official, they should at least have a copy of it so we know what the heck is going on. Now, like I said, I don't use the streetlight report, but I certainly use the dog report. Remember when we had that problem, we were able to put together information that we had, because again, without a mining system, and I'm going to go back to the computer, without a mining system, the hard copy is all we have.
Well, we need to figure out a better way to,
But can
What do we really
get
wanna
it? Can we
say?
get it as a digital file instead of carrying around all the
Now
paper?
he goes to Sunoco.
yeah,
It's being
well,
used
but what's-
digitally anyway.
Yeah, what about the gas bills? I mean,
What about the
maybe
one?
we could just get a total,
Yeah, I mean, we get
We
6
don't
sheets
need
of your officers.
all those gas bills.
Well, what we used to do for the gas is we'd print one sheet, but we had an average gas on it that Ira says was never accurate. So this is the report that comes right from the gas company per car, how much it's gassed up and everything else.
so basically most of this paper is because Ira wanted it.
No,
Ira
excuse
doesn't
me.
like trees. I don't know what to
I mean, I think there's certain
Trees are a
things we can say,
renewable
but-
source. I'd rather use trees than plastic. The problem is not that Ira wanted it, but we were getting asked questions. And you have to be able to answer the questions. To say to somebody as a commissioner or a commissioner, say, hey, I have no idea, is embarrassing. So if we have the report, but we have the
Say,
report,
well,
we
can I
have
say
the
I can
history.
find out
Yeah,
that?
thank you. One of the big
Right.
things that has always been said, and I'm not knocking any past chiefs or anything, but it was always they wanted to know absolutely everything, because if somebody asks me, I need to know that. You don't always know. It's impossible to know everything. And if you ask me something, that's why I say, even if you see something in a report and you have a question, rather than me waiting to come to a meeting and then I still don't have the answer, I have to go back and find out. Call me, ask. If somebody asks, I'll get the answer for you. So, it's not about knowing it right at that split second, but guaranteed you'll have that answer in a very short time.
But getting back to my question earlier, can we get it in a digital format if we want to? Just as a PDF, you're doing it digitally anyway.
It would just have to come separately, because everybody submits their reports. So I would have to send, okay, this came from Lucchese, the detective one. This
That
one
ain't
came
gonna work.
from.
Well, you have,
And I don't wanna
can I
pay
ask you a
for it.
question? Like
No, I'm serious. I don't
in
wanna
our
pay for it.
office, when we have multiple different types of information that we have to give to the same person, we have a lady there that knows how to attach them. And we could have like 11 attachments.
Well, I can do that, but
Same letter.
you want to have it like that still, I mean, you just.
I'm just saying, if he wants a digital form, instead of having like 14 different emails, we could have one email with 14 attachments, so.
Well, there are a lot of ways you can do it. I mean, all of these files, all of these spreadsheets, you can export very easily to a file and assemble them into either one file, like a PDF file, or make attachments, but one file's a lot better because then everything's together. And that way
Right.
you can save it on your phone and you don't have to print it, you don't have to drive and get it. And you'll be more timely, and you're going to save staples and paper and toner and all. I mean,
And
maybe it
and it's
just makes
private,
sense.
because it's just going direct to each of our personnel.
Well, one of the things that we talked about in another meeting was because the town board gets a copy of the files, and we talked about not being able to send them because they can be altered, because they're attachments, and
But it's a
That's why you
PDF, though, they can't
PDF
be,
it.
you can't
PDF it and it's locked
It's like
file.
taking a photo of the page and sending
Yeah.
that, so it's not an editable file.
Yeah, it's not, it can't be.
So how come we talked about, I know we talked about.
Well,
that
you could,
It is an
well, if you
editable file.
use, do you all use, you
It
use
can
Word
be
in your
edited,
office,
I've done
right?
it.
Yeah.
Well,
So
Just say-
if you do print
It would be the same kind of.
and you
it would
open
be
up
a-
print dot
Yeah, no,
dot dot,
I understand it, but
you can
it
print
is
to a
changeable,
PDF
unfortunately.
file. And it takes that document and puts it in a PDF file instead of sending it to the printer to print out
What
paper.
about going into like a Google circle?
So, I mean, next time I'm over at your
I'm
office,
sure
I'll
there
show
are
you.
lots of
how to-
I don't know that
Yeah.
much about it.
But it's one of the options, you have to go to file,
Such a tough
print,
waste. It's a waste.
not click
So
the
many
little
reasons.
button that's up there on the
Right.
menu bar, but
And
you
it's
have to go
inconvenient
file,
as well.
print.
And if you want to print
And
your own
then
up
one of the
again.
options in the lower left
Exactly.
corner is there's a little
And when it comes
drop-down
time to
box
get rid
and it
of
says
it, get
print
rid of
to
it, getting rid
PDF,
of it.
save as PDF,
It's gone.
da-da-da-da.
As opposed
So
to
you could,
shredding
you
and-
could
Right, 'cause this
print
is
to
all
PDF,
private.
or
You can
actually
just
just save it as a
anywhere.
You can't
PDF.
just throw it out.
And
But you could print out the 6
Word will
pages at
save the
once.
file to a PDF file. Okay. So,
So you still want all these, but in a PDF style?
Well, are we gonna sit down at some point and talk about what we really want, correct?
yeah, we
I mean,
should,
at
but
that
not
point, it's
tonight.
easy to delete what you don't
I
want.
mean,
An
that's,
individual
that's
can
almost
print
like
what
a
they do
fantastic
want.
homework assignment for
You know what I mean?
everybody.
Yeah,
Just-
well,
It's easy.
well, along with the interviews, walk away and think about, you see the paper, come up with some suggestions, and then you come up with some suggestions of stuff that you think we have to have, and of course, Ira will
Well, like I
want
said,
it all.
well, my problem with the PDA, which you just said, is I don't want to transfer the course from the town to myself.
Well, how would that happen?
Well, whose paper is going to be used, whose ink's going to be used if it's a PDF file to print it
Well, it's
out?
only if you print it. But then you can print just the things you want, or you don't have to print it.
Well, I'm
Or
just
you
saying.
could come here maybe and get it printed for you. Or you could still get it if you want it.
No, I'm just saying.
Print it at the
this is-
library.
Huh? I didn't hear you. What'd you
Print
say?
it at the
They have a
library,
budget too, they have to say.
so.
Printed at the campus library.
Well, my joke is, and I understand where I jokingly say Ira still uses a rotary cell phone, so.
There's nothing wrong with that,
Oh, you do too, that's right.
right?
Absolutely.
Okay,
They work a heck of a lot better than the cell phones do.
so we're gonna hold this one and everybody will think about that. Any announcements?
Yes. Well, I don't want to just like rush out of here.
Go ahead.
I mentioned this at the town gal meeting. May 5th is the Ulster County Chiefs Annual Award Banquet. This is Ulster County Chiefs Association's 40th anniversary as well. So it's kind of going to be a bigger deal. They're going to have an expo and like a little museum prior to the awards. It's held at Diamond Mills in Saugerties. The great part about this also, well, a little bit of the night starts at 4 o'clock. 4 to 5:30 is the museum hours. They're gonna have some vintage police cars from around the county, some old equipment, some nice little things, displays. 5:30 is then cocktail hour. 6:30 then becomes dinner and awards. Now that we're talking about awards, one of our officers, Calvin Halstead, is getting a Chiefs Award this year for his part in a investigation of all those burglaries we were getting hit with last year. We had about 20 businesses that were being hit.
Right.
He came up with a suspect based on an interview that he stumbled across somebody when we were doing a plainclothes detail looking for suspects. And he really felt strong on one person based on really his experience of just feeling something was wrong with him, with his story and where he was and why he was there, and just continued the investigation, keeping this person now as a person of interest, which led to ultimately his arrest. So for investigative abilities, he's getting an award for that during this ceremony. So if anybody is interested in a ticket, I did include you in that email, I believe. Tickets are $50 a person. It's a little more this year because of the museum and stuff that's going on. $50 a person or $90 for a couple. It can be a friend, it doesn't have to be a date, so bring whoever you want, and the more tickets you want, the better. I have some if you'd like to see me for them. Again, it's May 5th, and I think it would be great to have a couple members of the commission at least to be there to show support to one of our officers. I think it would be
Well,
great.
I was going to go, but you ruined it. You ruined it because May 5th is my birthday.
It is?
Yes,
So it's a
so,
perfect birthday gift for you.
There's a lot of competition because there's going to be a lot of people in the village on May 5th for the regatta. There's
Yeah,
a
I
big
know.
party going on for you down
Yeah.
there, Randall.
okay.
So it's a busy day.
Yeah, it's a busy day.
So when you're done with the regatta
what
around
time is
4:30 or
this-
so, you
is
can
this
hop on
event?
up there. 4:30 starts the,
That's a Sunday, right?
yes, it is.
It's a Sunday this year. 4:30. Okay.
Anyway, if anybody's interested, please see me. Anybody in the public's interested, come on up, support your police department.
All right. Other matters. I believe the chair will entertain a motion to go into executive session. Somebody want to offer that up?
Make a motion, we go into the executive session for the purpose of discussing
Personnel,
hiring, firing.
firing,
Contract. et
contracts,
cetera.
discipline.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Executive session. Okay, Becky, you escaped this one.
At least.
You escaped this one. Yeah.
With my.
We're gonna
meeting
take a break.
At 11 o'clock, you used to be able to go home at 7:30.
No, this is just an organizational meeting. That's why this one was like this, but
No,
they won't
no.
be like this.
This meeting
I don't know if I believe you.
No.
This meeting,